All right, good evening. This is a meeting of the Athens Board of Zoning Appeals. The time is 7:04 p.m. and the date is Tuesday, November 12th, 2024. At this time, I will call the meeting to order. The board currently consists of 5 members, actually 4 members and 2 alternates. The alternates taking full part in the discussions and becoming a voting member in the absence of a member or when a member abstains for a conflict of interest. Members present tonight are Ben Lockman, Aaron Thomas, and Paul Isherwood, and alternate Alicia Sweeney. And Alicia will be serving as a voting member for purposes tonight. And I'm Rob Dulwich, Chair of the Board of Zoning Appeals. So also present tonight and representing the city are Zoning Administrator Mr. David Riggs and a Zoning Administrator intern. Interns, plural now, okay. Would you like to state your names?
Leah Marshall.
Ethan Bollinger.
Thanks for being here. So there are 7 cases on tonight's agenda for properties located at 46 Columbia Avenue, 5 Pomeroy Road, 327 East State Street, 170 East State Street, and 3 cases at 0 University Estates Boulevard. The board is required to take testimony under oath. Would anyone wishing to speak tonight concerning any item on the agenda, please stand. So this is audience, anyone who plans to speak. Do you swear or affirm that any testimony you will present to the board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thanks. Okay, so Mr. Riggs, you're going to try and present us with the rules that we're following tonight for the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Thanks, please bear with me because this is long. The board operates according to the following procedure. The chair will name and describe the case. The zoning administrator or secretary will state the basis of the objection and any applicable facts or conditions pertaining to the case. The applicant or the representative will give reason why the appeal should be viewed favorably. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the request will be heard. Anyone wishing to speak in general comment will be heard. And then anyone wishing to speak in opposition will be heard. If necessary, the appellant or their representative will offer a concluding summary or rebuttal remarks. Testimony from the floor shall be closed, and the board will deliberate and render a decision. According to Athens City Code, Section 230703B, the board has the power to grant variances from the strict application of the code, provided the variance will not be contrary to the public interest, the spirit of the code will be observed, public safety and welfare are secured, and substantial justice is done. According to the Athens City Code, Section 230710C, variances from the code shall not be granted unless the board makes specific findings of fact based directly on the particular evidence presented to it, that the standards and conditions imposed in this title, if applicable, have been met by the applicant. These findings are exceptional circumstances. There are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to the property in question or to the intended use of the property that do not apply generally to other properties or classes or uses in the same zone. Practical difficulty and undue hardship. Because of exceptional or extraordinary conditions pertaining to a specific piece of property, a liberal enforcement of these regulations will result in practical difficulty or undue hardship that is unnecessary to the achievement of public purposes. Preservation of equal property rights. Literal interpretation of these regulations would deprive the appellant of rights commonly enjoyed by others in the same zone and the same vicinity, while granting of the requested variance will not confer on the appellant any special privilege that is denied to other properties in the same zone and the same vicinity. Minimum variance. The variance granted is the minimum variance required to make possible the reasonable use of the property. Absence of detriment. The authorizing of such variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property and will not materially impair the purpose of the zoning code or the public interest. Not of a general nature. The condition or situation of the specific piece of property or the intended use of said property for which variance is sought, one or the other or in combination, is not of so general or recurrent in nature as to make reasonably practical the formation of a general regulation for such condition or situation. So that's conditional uses. Any person, resident, officer, or department appointed by the body of City of Athens, aggrieved by a decision of the board, may petition Athens County Court of Common Pleas concerning the illegality of the decision. Such petition must be filed within 30 days after the mailing of the decision of the board to the applicant.
Thank you very much. I'm glad I didn't have to do that. So our first case on the agenda tonight is case number 24-11V at 46 Columbia Avenue. The appellant is requesting a variance from ACC 23.11 Table B to allow a rental with 2 parking spaces where 3 are required. So, Mr. Riggs, will you provide us with your brief of the case?
Sure, thank you. This was a request for a short-term rental at 46 Columbia Avenue. This is an R1 zone. They currently have 2 parking spaces, and by code, being a rental, owner-occupied rental, they need 2 spaces for the owner-occupied and then 1 space for the rental. They have 2 spaces available. So they're asking for a variance. They have 2 spaces where 3 are required.
So does the board have any questions for Mr. Riggs? We might come back to you. But
Yeah.
So at this time, I'd like to invite the appellant or their representative to please approach the podium, or I guess approach the bench in this case. And provide any pertinent testimony or give reason why the request should be viewed favorably.
Hello,
So introduce yourself, I guess.
I'm
That's a good
Jana
first step.
Tameli. I live at Columbia, 46 Columbia. I live by myself, and so the requirement is that there should be 2 parking spots for the people who live there, but the people who live there is just me. So I just require 1 parking spot, and there's a second parking spot for the short-term rental. My house is unique in the sense that there's a street behind, and my house is the only one with a very clear parking spot behind my house in which the person could park there, come up the stairs, and I have a studio apartment in my basement, and they can go there without even having to be on the front of the house or bother the neighbors in any way.
So with the garage, is that part of the house, the garage? I couldn't tell if that was part of
It
your
is.
house or the neighbor's house.
It's a building that is
Yes.
combined, so there's 2 spots, one for me and one for my,
Okay.
yeah,
So it could be off-street parking, basically.
also,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes, I was looking at aerial imagery, and there's seldom very many people parking on the street there, it seems. So there's at least 2/3 of the street is not used for parking, so there's a lot of open parking available on the street,
Right,
it does seem. So you said there's access to the back of your property?
right. There's an alley that, unless your car is really like a big truck, can easily go into the alley, and I have a reserved area that can serve as a parking spot. And the entrance to the basement is on the back, so they can just come up the stairs.
So I missed that last conversation. That garage, is that your garage?
It's
Next-
combined, it's
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 half.
1 building with 2 spots,
And
and
it's split between the residences?
between mine and my
That's
neighbor,
interesting.
yes.
Huh.
Yeah,
There are several of them in Athens.
yes, especially on Columbia Avenue, there's,
And there was one we provided a variance for, actually, so on Morris at one point, so interesting.
So the existing 2 two spots are one in the driveway, one in the garage? Or is one of the spots
Yeah,
on
one
the alley?
B.
in the driveway, one in the garage.
But the back is, it's more one on the driveway and one on the back.
And does that alley connect to Troy?
Both, Troy and Highland,
Troy and
Oh,
wow.
it goes all the way through?
yeah.
Yeah, it's not from both the front and from the aerial view, you can't see any of that.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to be too creepy when I be
Yeah.
riding around looking at
Yeah,
real slow.
it's a great, don't tell anyone, but it's, although we're telling everybody, it's a great walking area back there. Mhm.
Yeah, circled around twice, like, how many cars can park here?
Director Riggs,
Yes.
do parking areas from that like a back access alley, are they considered for this, in this case, or?
Not in the alley, although people do park in them, but that's not considered a legal parking space because that's a public alley.
Right, but if it's off of the alley,
It could be, yes, yeah, so as long as it meets the size requirements.
Yes, that, which I believe is my case. It's off the alley with the size for a medium-sized car.
So with that garage that's in between the two homes, you share that space, that garage space, or that garage is strictly for your property? The two car or the?
So it's for two separate houses. It's just happened that the building is combined, but there is a wall splitting.
Okay.
So I have a space on the top and another space on the bottom, which is not the space I'm talking about.
Okay, all right.
So that could also be another parking area,
Right.
but I'm not considering that.
And so, what was the code office considering by having two spaces? The garage was assumed to be a parking space? Is that
Correct.
the way you
yes.
did this? Okay.
Are the spaces at the bottom through the alleyway, are they paved or gravel, or is it just grass?
Grass.
Okay.
So I've had two neighbors needing a place to park their car, and they parked there without a problem for a while. I know may not be the time, I don't know exactly. I have letters of support from my neighbors that I can provide.
Sure, why don't you provide those to me here and I'll take a look and we may need to read them into the record.
So if you have this as a short-term rental, where would the access be? So would you have the short-term tenant park in the alley?
And off the alley parking spot that is right off the alley,
Okay.
yes.
Or could
On
be,
Troy?
So it's,
Yeah, so you can go through Troy, you can
this
get,
is the alleyway through here, and then, so there's like a grass spot here. that you
Okay,
get
now I
through.
understand.
So it's not on the actual alleyway,
Okay.
it's just a patch of grass off of the alleyway.
Correct.
Yeah. I understand. But because it's not paved and approved, it's not counting as a parking space.
and my argument is more that the need of a two parking spot for the household when I live there by myself.
And Jana, is the short-term rental is a apartment in the basement.
Correct,
It's a single floor or double, or two floors?
two floors,
So two floors above that?
no, one floor above that, so it's a
So-
two-story
So-
house.
Right, okay. And then on the main floor that you live in, is that single bedroom, two bedroom?
Two bedroom.
Two bedroom, okay. Thanks.
it's a three. Any other questions for the appellant? Okay, so why don't you go ahead and take a seat here in case you have to respond to someone else here. Is there anyone present wishing to speak in favor of this request? Anybody here in the audience will speak in favor of this request? Anybody?
Well, do you want to read those letters?
Yeah, actually, yeah,
That's
right.
probably-
Before I move on, let's do that, yes. So, would you mind reading one of these?
Nope.
So I'm gonna read a letter into the record. This is from the 10th of November. To whom it may concern, I am writing to support my neighbor Jana Chimelli in their appeal for a rental permit at 46 Columbia Avenue. I have lived nearby and I've known Jana as a considerate and responsible neighbor. Granting this small parking variance would allow her to rent part of their home without impacting our neighborhood. Several homes nearby already hold rental permits, and this request would only align with what many of us already enjoy in terms of property use. I believe Jana will continue to keep the property's use consistent with the quiet residential character of our area. Please consider this letter as a show of support from a neighbor who trusts Jana's judgment and commitment to the well-being of our community. Sincerely, Christopher Parrish.
And is that 44?
44 Columbia Avenue.
Jana, can you tell me who I can't read the names on this letter?
It's Tatiana Olin and Mikio Olin.
Okay. That's what, okay, I'll try to remember that when I read it. Okay, this letter is dated November 10th, 2024 from Tatiana Olin and Mikio Olin. And they are resident at 47 Columbia Avenue. To whom it may concern, I live near 46 Columbia Avenue, where Jana Chimelli is seeking a rental permit. I'm writing in support of their request for a small variance in the parking requirements. As a longtime resident of this neighborhood, I value the peaceful and respectful atmosphere we share. Jana Chimelli has been a dependable and respectful neighbor, and I'm confident she will ensure that any rental arrangement upholds the character of our community. Her property has unique features that suit a modest rental setup, and allowing this variance would have no negative impact on our neighborhood. I hope you will consider this letter as a vote of confidence in Jana Chimelli's ability to manage this rental responsibly and in harmony with our community. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay. Again, anyone else want to speak in support of this request? Present? No? All right, so is there anyone present wishing to speak in general comment about this case? Seeing none. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this case? Okay. So I'll close testimony from the floor and we'll now deliberate. So I guess you can return. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any discussion before we dive into the questions? And again, we need to speak up so we can be heard on the recording, by the way, so I may be doing that okay, I'm not sure. One thing I think to make clear here is that the variance is not for the rental per se, it's just for a parking space to enable the rental to be allowed. So it's really a parking issue. And so that's the focus here.
Right, from
Not-
the
not-
short-term rental perspective, this is an allowed use. It's owner occupied.
Yes.
That's not the question. The question is purely, is two parking spaces enough, or is the requirement by code of
Mhm.
3 more important?
That's good clarification.
On this street, we have granted a parking variance
Yeah, I was gonna say somewhat recently.
in the
we
last
did.
year.
Yeah.
It was for a rental, long-term rental, single family. They required to have, I think, 3 spaces.
I think we let them have 2.
And we looked at one, I think is all we required of them,
Did
if
we
I
only
recall
let-
correctly.
was it only 1? Okay.
Yes. So,
But that was just down the street.
it was
Yeah.
down the street about a block, yeah.
Where actually, I think, I just drove by today, but like, parking is better the farther this way you go. Like,
Yes.
you know, if you go towards that previous variance, it's actually more congested there.
Yeah, like I mentioned, I looked at probably 7 different aerial images and I counted from 3 to 7 cars in the sort of 7 or 8 building, 7 or 8 house block here. And so there's not a lot of people parking on the street here.
And it seems like with the arrangement that she's proposing, and even with a permit granted to rent, that's not gonna change that all that much either.
Plus it's the space behind the house too, the grass space.
Right, ultimately, that's what she wants to use. So. All right, any other comments or discussion? Okay, so are there exceptional circumstances or exceptional or extraordinary circumstances applying to the property in question? And, yeah, well, the geography sort of limits the available parking on site. It's interesting that the garage is split.
Yeah, I would say the garage being split is definitely
Because I was thinking of
unique.
the two spaces
So
with the
go back to
spaces in
this
front of the
question.
garage. So that's certainly exceptional circumstances. So I'd say it seems like there is, yes, exceptional circumstances here. Anybody disagree? All right. Is there practical difficulty and undue hardship because of exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions pertaining to a specific piece of property? Literal enforcement of these regulations result in practical difficulty or undue hardship that is unnecessary to the achievement of public purposes. I'm not going to read every question, but maybe one tonight I'll read them. Comments about that?
Huh? See no issue.
So I think one of the things that was mentioned in the documentation was, getting some extra income with a short-term rental is allowed under normal circumstances, and that I think it would be sort of undue hardship not to grant those same kind of property rights that others can have in the same area.
Yeah,
Seems
and
to make sense.
I think
Although that's getting into the next question.
the piece that goes along with that is if you're only doing this as a short-term rental, but you require the exact same parking as a long-term rental, that doesn't necessarily not completely track in my opinion, right?
Mm.
It's more onerous for somebody who's only renting this out some of the time.
And it's not as if, like, there will still be parking spaces available. So it would be, she's renting it out short term, and it's not as if she's either she's denying a parking space to someone else, or she's no longer able to park at the property herself, or she's not providing a parking space to that renter. So she is providing, that access to whoever she would rent it to, and to the extent that she is physically able to do so.
So preservation of equal property rights, I just touched on that a moment
Yeah.
ago. Any disagreement that this,
No, I
No.
granting this would allow equal property rights, preservation of their property rights?
We just did one, 3-4 months ago, so
Yeah.
right down the street.
Minimum variance,
Yeah.
Yeah.
one space
Spaces
for the
did.
minimum. Again, we had an example down the street where we granted more than that, so. Absence of detriment.
I think there's no detriment.
We've heard from a couple property owners.
Yeah.
Not of a general nature. I don't see this as being of a general nature at all, so. All right, would someone from the board like to propose a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to grant a variance from ACC 23.11 Table B to allow a rental with 2 parking spaces where 3 spaces are required for 46 Columbia Avenue.
Seconded.
Thank you.
Rob, I'll be abstaining from this one.
Okay.
I know John too well.
Okay, so we have 4 of us voting then.
Mhm.
Call for a vote. All right, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. All right, we have 4 votes for and 1 abstention. So you have your variance. Okay, next case. Case 24-12V at 5 Pomeroy Road. Appellant is requesting a variance from ACC 23.04.05 A1 and ACC 23.04.07 A to allow residential use on the first floor in a B3 zone where residential use must be on the second floor and above. So, Director Riggs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to just talk first and kind of in general about the variances that we're looking at. We've got a couple of variances tonight that we're going to be looking at that has to do with the use. So some communities actually break down variances into what they call general variances or area variances, which is just like, are you asking for a variance from the setbacks? Those are pretty common and pretty simple, and hopefully you'll be seeing a lot fewer of those because we have updated our bulk controls, significantly changed the requirements for setbacks, area coverage, and that kind of things that would be associated with general variances. When you get to use variances, I think the same thing applies. You still have to look at the 6 criteria, but in addition to that, you have to, as the code says, allow that variance that will not be contrary to the spirit of the zoning code, and that's ACC 230703B. And it's difficult to reconcile that, right? Because how can you be within the spirit of the code and still allow a use that's not allowed in that zone, right? So that's just in general something that you want to consider. Specifically about this case, however, I will say a couple of things. One is that we went back and looked, and it does look like a residential property, but we have a pretty long history of seeing that first floor used as commercial space. So it's really not a grandfathered use that you typically see. I will make a comment here about this area. Our zoning code for the city of Athens was adopted in the 60s, right?
Oh, really?
And at that time, Pomeroy Road was a major thoroughfare to the city. That's where you want to have your business districts, your B districts. You want those to be on those major thoroughfares, just like on East State Street, where residential is probably not the best use. Commercial is really the best use for those areas. But since the 60 years since that was adopted, things have changed in this area, and I no longer consider Pomeroy Road to be a major thoroughfare. It's a minor arterial at best, maybe a local collector, but it's not a road like East State Street or Union is. And so the zoning map was probably appropriate for that area in the 1960s. And if you guys, whether you decide to approve or deny this variance request, one of the things I'd ask that you do is ask staff to have a look at that area, because there are a lot of first floor residential operating there. And I think we've actually approved variances recently for first single floor residential on Pomeroy Road. So it may be that the current zoning is maybe not appropriate for this area anymore. And the city ought to revisit it.
So is that something we should suggest to city council as a
You should
board,
yeah,
or?
I would say you make a recommendation to reevaluate that, staff to reevaluate that, and I'll move that forward, if that's something you think is appropriate.
So there's only a really small part of that, and I don't know how up to date my map is, but it's just that really small part around the junction between Pomeroy Road
Yeah.
and Richland and Albany Road.
Yeah.
And the rest, it seems to be all as R1.
Yes.
So what would you recommend that be rezoned as?
I've talked to the city planner, we've had some discussions about this, and that's really more of like a B1
Yeah,
neighborhood business zone where you can have residential and commercial together, and that's kind of what it is right now,
Yeah.
really. But the zoning does not reflect that.
and it's certainly, that's the feeling you have on Richland Avenue, and as I was looking at this today, it doesn't really feel any separate from the
Correct.
vibe or the sense of that.
You go up a quarter mile, it's one family homes past the Carpet Place to get into
Yeah.
more.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, and if you look at the
100
zoning,
yards.
it's literally like just this tiny little
One
section.
spot. West Union is the same way.
Yeah.
That has come up multiple times for West Union with the B1 versus R1. West Union
I
and
mean, I think it
Schaefer
might
Street.
only be as far as.
Yeah, I think it includes the veterinary clinic and then it stops. On that side, but here on this
Yeah.
side, it's even earlier.
Yeah, so
these are all
here,
residents.
if you wanna see
Yeah.
the zoning map in more detail right here, so there's the B3 zone, here's the property here. So it is a small segment, there's a dispensary here, I'm not sure what other carpet business is.
The
that
carpet
on the
one is
other
there,
side?
so carpet
Yeah.
one is
Floor
right
more.
next to it.
Mhm.
But it's apartments there too. It's dispensary, it's townhouses,
And then there's
carpet.
these are the houses across the street that are mentioned in one of the letters.
So the house across the street, the first floors used to be businesses in the first floor. Used to be an insurance office
Yep.
there. And it was apartments upstairs for probably 20-something years, insurance office.
Yeah, and we did have, for both the two main structures across the street, we had a variance request. And, or use, I'm not sure if it was a variance, is it a variance or a use?
It was a use request variance, and,
Okay, use.
in that case, if you had voted no, you'd had to evict some of the people that were there, so it was a
That's exactly.
current non-conforming use, the question was whether it was legal non-conforming or not, was really what wasn't clear.
And I'll say that I think that played a major role in our decision, was the fact that there were people already living in the first floor of those buildings.
Yeah.
And
I think
they
that it
were
was-
military veterans who were gonna be evicted if we-
And it was HUD housing as well, low income HUD housing as
Yes.
well.
Yeah, so there were reasons specifically, and every case is different, right? We need to keep that in mind. So just because we granted that across the street doesn't mean this one is like we should automatically default to granting it. We still have to make this decision based on circumstances here. And it is a little different. It looks like it has been recently at least a business. There's even a sign in front of it, or next to the building, for some kind of service. I forget what it was.
We went back and looked several years, and there seems to be a business on that first floor historically.
And I will say from the business perspective, I know that business, real estate is generally at a premium within Athens. It's not something that's super available, particularly not that's, kind of reasonable, kind of rates and stuff like that, so, yeah. I think the fluff building is completely full right now, for instance, which has not been the case in the past.
Which building?
The fluff building, which is like one of the, places that small businesses can have offices.
I'm sure that's not
Uptown.
official.
Uptown.
The fluff building,
fluff
yeah,
building.
I think because it's it shows up on the maps that way.
All right, any other questions for Director Riggs before we dive into this? Okay, so at this time I'd like to invite the appellant or the representative to please approach the bench. I'm gonna keep saying that tonight. And provide any pertinent testimony or give reason why the request should be viewed favorably.
Hello, my name's Jessica Hickman. We recently purchased this property the beginning of October. It had been on the market for 3 months before we did purchase it. I know there were multiple people who did look at it for commercial purposes. So we purchased it with the hopes of getting it approved for residential use as well. We actually live right up the road. So we are very familiar with the area. Spoke to both Eric that owns Floormore, and Eric that owns the property across the street as well as 6 and 8. They are all for it as far as we have the letters of support that were included with our paperwork that we turned in. There isn't much traffic. Like I said, I live on Coventry, which is right up the road. It would be used for my father, is what we're hoping to rent it to. He is a veteran as well. On the inside of the house, it's never, I know it has been used as commercial, but it still has the layout, nothing on the interior has ever changed. Still has the 2 bedrooms, bathroom, the basement. The only thing, it still has a fridge, the whole kitchen's still there. The only thing it doesn't have is a stove, which could easily be installed. The parking is fine, there's no problems with ingress or egress for that. There's parking on the side, is a garage in the back as well, that is a part of it for parking, in addition to it's probably worth 2 spaces to pull into the garage, and then you also have the parking in the front as well. So yeah, as far as the interior goes, it's never been remodeled for that use. And I did look at the history as well. Edna owned it. She bought it in '96 and used it as an insurance company. Her husband passed last year, I believe. And then before that, it was owned by Ask Me. Before that, I think that was in '88. That's as far back as I could find online with the deed records for that. And I think that's all I have.
I guess, if there's anything else you want to elaborate on that could be helpful. You can keep talking, in other words, if there's something else you think that might help us make a decision in your favor.
Well, you guys summed a lot of it up before I even got up here as far as like the use. I mean, I could add to that, but like I said, I live in the neighborhood. There isn't a whole lot of traffic there. A lot of it has been used. I think allowing this, just like there's not enough commercial, there's also not enough residential here in Athens. There's not enough units for people to rent. So I think having it zoned or even a conditional use, it could still be used as commercial, but it could be used as residential as well. And I think that would open opportunities up in the future for anybody if we decided not to own it anymore. Or if it got rezoned, how would that work if that was zone B1? The other problem is it's only 1 story, not 2 story. So we can't, unless we built a second story to it, we don't qualify. Like this across the street, the 6 and 8, they had the 2 story. So you could still have the businesses under and the residential on top, but with this building, it is only 1 story. So you're not able to, unless you're gonna build a whole one. But if it was rezoned, so with the B1 zoning, you would be able to have commercial and residential there regardless. Either one. So, and it is such a small area where that is.
Is that the same with B2 as well? Or?
No, that's where the cutoff is. A B1 allows residential on the first floor. B2 is where that residential on the first floor and below stops.
In all of Richland, pretty much it's all B2.
We'd like to have another look at that as well.
Yeah.
So.
Jessica, there's only 1 letter in our packet. Did you say that there were 2?
There should have been 2. I don't know if Eric Lee.
We got Eric Lee.
Eric. He said he did send it, but maybe he didn't. I don't know.
I see one from Eric Lee.
Yeah, the other one was supposed to. I forgot Eric's last name.
Yeah.
He's the owner of Floor and More. Lucas, yes. Thank you.
You need me to read the letter into record?
Yeah, we'll do that in a minute here, sure. You're volunteering, good. Any other questions for the appellant?
Does your dad currently live here?
Yes, he lives in Athens.
Does he rent currently, or does he own?
He is living with us currently. So he's in his late 60s, and that is the other. He moved here from Illinois to be closer to family because he is getting older.
Yeah.
And it's more difficult. So it was kind of a good thing for everyone. It will be.
Well, it will be better when it's a block away. Yeah. I think everybody having their own space is always a good thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah. For everyone involved. Thank you.
All right, why don't I see if there's anyone here who, if you can go ahead and take a seat on the side here, just in case you need to come back up, that'd be good. Anyone present wishing to speak in favor of the request? So if you could approach the bench as well, please. Thank you. So we can get you on record.
And Robin, state your name and address, is that correct?
Thank you. Yes, please state your name and address.
Matt Geyser. I actually live in Wilkesville, Ohio, but do you need my street address down there?
Just for the record, sure.
Okay, 37829 Mace Cemetery Road. But I also happen to own Atlas Ventures LLC, which is directly across the street from this property that has 1.4 acres. So I figured since I was here tonight and she's on the docket, I would at least speak in favor of it, being the neighbor directly across the street that has 1.4 acres there. So I would be in favor of that, and just give support for that. I think what she's doing. I mean, not much commercial use there. Also been a real estate agent for about 18 years here now in Athens, and do a lot of commercial. And there's not a big market for commercial on that small of a lot and that small of a building. So
your property across the street, is it developed property or is it?
no, it's vacant.
It's a vacant property. Okay.
Yeah. If you look on the map, it joins the two homes there. I think Debbie Arnold used to have one there. She had her office, but it's 1.4 acres for Atlas Ventures.
Mm-hmm.
So it's right before Coventry on the opposite
Yep.
side?
Yeah, it joins, it's Coventry and Palmer Road there.
It's Zone B3. You have
It is Zone B3.
commercial ideas to develop that property, or is it just you're holding it?
One day, we'll see. Actually, probably more as a sale, like, wait for, I mean, it's a lot larger parcel than this. I mean, it's a developable commercial parcel there, but yeah, I mean, probably one day somebody, I think Demetrius only waited about 18 years to find something for his convenience store there on the corner, so, maybe one day something come along for mine. And that's the other thing. I mean, that convenience store sat vacant for 15, 16 years, short of like maybe one or two tries that people tried to do something. There's not a big commercial use there on Palmer Road. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in support of the request? Okay, anyone wishing to speak in general comment about this case? Or anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Okay. Thanks. So I guess we'll go ahead and close the floor. And
Did you read the letter?
oh, right. Thank you. We skipped that. Let's read the letter to the record for letter of support here.
All right, letter of support from Eric Lee. Subject: support for residential use of 5 Pomeroy Road. Dear members of the Board of Zoning Appeals and Athens City Code Office, I'm reaching out to express my support for proposed residential use of the property at 5 Pomeroy Road. As a property owner of 6 and 8 Pomeroy Road, I've seen firsthand the evolving character and needs of this area, and I believe residential use for this property would be a valuable addition. The demand for housing, especially quality rental options, has increased significantly in the area. Several properties on Pomeroy already allow for residential units on the first floor, which have contributed to the welcoming neighborhood atmosphere. This shift towards residential use aligns with the current needs of Athens residents more than additional ground floor business would. In addition, I'll work to develop a small supportive community for veterans across from 6 and 8 Pomeroy. Allowing residentials for 5 Pomeroy would enable us to extend this informal veteran community by welcoming another resident who would benefit from the contribute to the supportive environment we have created. I believe granting residential use for 5 Palmer Road would not only address the local housing need, but will also enhance the sense of community in our neighborhood. Thank you for considering this request. I'm hopefully that we can work together to make a positive impact on our area. Best regards, Eric Lee.
Thank you. All right, so closing the floor. I guess you might as well just, maybe it makes sense for you to go back to your seat. Thank you very much. We'll call you back if we need to. Sometimes we do that, but. Okay. So, Any general discussion before we deliberate on the rules and the questions at hand?
I think I have a question for you, Director Riggs. Right next door is, was it, is Carpet One now? I think as far as the kind of like use of the area is concerned, that's kind of the anchor, in my mind, of the, the like business component of it. In the, like, if it moves to a B1, that use is still supported, but there's probably not other businesses around it.
You get the veterinary clinic as well, which I'm not sure have to be grandfathered in as a legal non-conforming use in a B1, I believe.
Because it's not, even though it's a.
It's currently fine right now, but if you were to rezone it to a B1, I don't think it's allowed. I think it's allowed in a started in a B3.
B3 or an M zone, probably, right?
Would Carpet One, given a rezoning, would it be potentially rezoned into like multi-unit residential? Would that be like a conforming use in that scenario?
Yes. So yeah, you could rezone it. Does seem to be. I've had a couple of people looking in this area for multifamily units. So there is some demand for that, especially in this area. That would be a permitted use.
In a B1.
And the City Planning Commission just heard a communication at the last meeting last week or week before about a proposed development that would go in behind the homes in the street here.
Yeah.
The access would be next door to Carpet One almost, so just
Yeah.
next property over would be the driveway essentially for that new apartment building. I think it was 80 units they were proposing. So and I can't remember, is there a zoning change for that? It's R1 currently,
R1,
right?
R3.
So it is currently zoned R1, so this is an R3 type development though, that would potentially go in there. So again, its potential is a communication, no site plan or anything yet, but just to convey that additional idea that there's more development potentially here, which is the R3 type development.
To be honest, I'm not sure if that makes it more or less appropriate to move towards a residential use, because you actually want adjoining business, commercial use for supporting businesses if you're adding a large number of residential units in it.
But I think it does make sense with the B1.
But I don't know if I don't think we can attach
Yeah,
those two as.
but it makes sense for a B1 zone, I think,
Yeah.
to be in, area to support services, to support that type of development and the other residential in the area.
And as like a transitional zone between B2 and the residential, to have a B1 makes a lot of sense.
And it's not like it's not next to other services. There's Richland Avenue provides that. I'm not sure what specific service you would offer out of that structure that would make that more viable. More likely one.
So where's the R1 starting at? Is that first house?
An insurance agent right next
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah.
That's
actually, it's
a reasonable point.
Yeah.
I think it's in general.
But I think you were talking about in general rather than.
Yeah.
Like
What are they
having
talking about?
having services within
Yeah.
walking distance is a core
See that.
Yeah.
Improvement of livability
Yeah.
for any area.
I was just looking where the R1 starts at.
Yeah,
on-
the R1 zone starts in the parking lot of the Carpet Place. The last parking lot is actually an R1 zone. And then the area that would be potentially developed is for that apartment complex is R1, that would be the entrance. And then up the hill, up the street is R1 on both sides. Okay, so ready for questions?
Yeah.
Are there exceptional circumstances?
We skipped one.
Sorry.
Did we skip one?
Practical difficulty.
And undue hardship?
Exceptional circumstances is the first one.
Oh, not on this, so.
I mean, I think the core one and my view is, you know, changing use of this area, a secondary one being that it is only a single floor unit.
Yeah.
I don't, I mean, there are a lot of single floor units though that are, you know, in business areas that are just businesses, and that's fine. So I don't think that that's particularly exceptional compared to the changing use of this being a historic arterial that is very much not one anymore.
I think maybe some of the exceptional circumstances here would be that it is a small property, there's not much commercial you could do with it. There's not much you can have in there, there's not many options.
Still a house without a
Yeah, so
stove.
it does, even though, like you started, you can trace it back and it's being used as a business. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it seems to be a residential building, a house.
How about practical difficulty and undue hardship?
Are you allowed to consider that her father would have to plan to live with her?
Well, I mean, probably not that, but there are a large number of, you know, units available within, you know, short area that are rental units. Like most of those units are owner-occupied.
Yeah, I think this is a tough one. It's hard to say yes, I think, in my perspective on this one, but it,
Yeah, I don't think it's a strong undue hardship compared, you know,
Yeah.
all things considered.
how about preservation of equal property rights? So we discussed that a little bit. The properties across the street have been granted a variance.
Lot up is a R1.
Yeah, I think that's the core is that, you know, like literally 3 buildings up is this would be completely fine.
Mm-hmm. Minimum variance? I think it's yes or no probably on this really, right? So,
Yes.
I mean, you can't really split this building and have a residential use in the back and the office in the front necessarily, unless that person is living there is the one running the business.
Yeah, I mean, there could be a startup, you know, a startup in the garage, right? Like
Yeah. Is he gonna start a business?
Absence of detriment. So we've heard from one neighbor, 2 neighbors, and a third that expressed to her at least support, but maybe didn't officially provide it, but,
And no one here speaking out against it.
right.
Neighbor support with the property across the street.
And if it sounds like there's a possibility that there's gonna be more residents living up the road, it doesn't feel like this will dramatically change the tone or nature of that particularly marginally zoned part of Pomeroy Road.
And not of a general nature.
Are those applicable for, this isn't a variance, right?
Is there? This is
Oh, it is.
a use variance.
So, yeah, I don't think this is of a general nature. It's a very specific question about the zoning.
Yeah.
It's just,
Okay.
And also particularly if we're gonna make a recommendation that the city council revisit the nature of the zoning in this area, then that's gonna change anyway.
Yeah, so, at what point do we make that statement, do you think?
I would make it as, not as a condition of the use, but as a supplement to whatever the decision is. So typically there's 3 ways to make a zoning change. One is the property owner asks for a zoning request. Typically that's difficult to do because you don't want to spot zone. You have a whole area B3 B3 and you want residential in there, you don't spot zone. So that's something you want to avoid. You can also have planning commission make a recommendation to make a change, or city council can decide to do that.
What are the apartments behind there next to the dispensary? Is that a R2 for the condo, or is it 2-floor apartments?
I have to look at the map. I don't-
Cause
It's a B2 zone.
B2,
I think it's B2.
Yeah, it's B2 and it looks, is it condos or, yeah, some kind of,
They're apartments, they're
yeah,
three-story apartments.
Yeah, I think they're for us, right?
Yeah.
yes,
and it is in a B2 zone
alright.
behind there.
So it's plenty of apartments, but it's, when you look at the map, it's like a B3,
Right here.
B1.
Is that what was the gas station?
Behind, what was it? Well, actually.
It's like each
this
parcel
used to
got
be
a different
gas station
zoning.
or
Yeah.
something, right? So I think it's these structures
Ah.
here.
Yeah, it's a large complex. They've been there for a long time.
Oh, I know.
I don't know what category this falls under, so I didn't know where to bring this up in, but if this was a commercial property, I'm sure they would have to come back for a variance for parking. Like, there's no place that would meet any commercial requirements for parking on this site
I thought it's
either.
2 spaces in the front.
So like, I guess it depends on what the commercial use is, but
There's a garage. You could probably have
It
3
would be tight.
spaces here. It's a square footage requirement. It's
No,
very
it's
small.
based on the use, what
Yeah,
kind of
okay.
commercial use it is. There's a certain number of parking spaces, and you just recall, those have been significantly reduced. In 21 or 22, we about have the required parking spaces for commercial uses.
So, and what they could do is always lease space from a neighbor business if they needed to, potentially, if they needed more spaces. And there is available parking, it seems, at the neighbors. Okay, so would anyone like to propose a motion?
I am abstaining from this one, to be clear.
You have a conflict, yes?
Yeah, Jessica's my employee.
Okay,
I'll bring a motion, I propose a motion, to grant the appellant, at 5 Pomeroy Road, case 24-12V, where the appellant is requesting a variance from ACC 23.04.05A1 and ACC 23.04.07A, to allow a residential use on the first floor in a B3 zone where residential use must be on the second floor and above.
Seconded.
thank you. All right, any other comments, deliberation before we take a vote? Did you also want to include a statement about the city revisiting the zoning for this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, yeah, definitely,
So include that in the motion?
should I do, we're doing a motion? Okay.
Yeah.
So I make a second motion, but I first hit, for the appellant at 5 Pomeroy Road, case number 24-12V, where the appellant is requesting a variance from ACC 23.04.05A1 and ACC 23.04.07A to allow residential use on the floor in a B3 zone where residential use must be on the second floor and above. Additionally, the board recommends that council and the planning commission take under advisement changing this zoning for this area of Pomeroy Road, potentially to a B1 zone.
Seconded.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, ready to take a vote?
Yes.
Yes.
All those in favor, please raise your right hand. 4 and 1 abstaining. So you have your variance. Thank you for your time. Okay, case number 24-14S at 327 East State Street. Appellant is requesting a substitution in accordance with ACC 23.07.02B to change a legal non-conforming single-family residential use to a legal non-conforming multifamily residential use. Mr. Riggs, could you advise
Thank
us?
you, Mr. Chair. This actually started out as another request for a use variance, but after our staff looked at it a little bit, we thought that it would make better sense to come in as a substitution rather than a variance request. And the reason we talked to the appellant, and I think they agreed with this and changed a little bit. So with a substitution, we have different from the previous case, we have a first floor residential use that we have a long history of, so it's a legal non-conforming use currently. And what they're asking to do is to change to another legal non-conforming use, and then you need to decide if that's more or less or similar to what the current non-conforming use is. So it's currently a non-conforming single-family residential, and they're requesting to change that use or to substitute that use to a legal non-conforming multifamily residential use. So this would not be a variance. This would be a substitution.
So what's considered a legal, non-conforming, single-family home?
Yeah,
How
so
is that
you
set
have,
up?
so that's what they've had in the past here. They've had a family that lives there. They're actually on the first floor living there. So that's the legal non-conforming use. Some people call it grandfathering, right? So it's been a use that may have even been there before the zoning code came into effect. And so you don't want to deprive somebody of that use that they've always had for their property. We do put the caveat in that a legal non-conforming use must be continuous. So if that use stops for a year or longer, they lose that legal non-conforming stature, and they're no longer allowed to use that property for what they have in the past.
And so in the new scenario with multifamily, would that be basically turning it into a duplex?
Duplex, I believe, yes.
And
Triplex.
Triplex, yeah, it's A, B, and C.
Yeah.
And then, was this property, it was in very bad shape for quite a long time.
Yes.
Was it, like, is there any history related to that? Was it, like,
No, from what we can tell, it's been continually used as residential, even though it's in a business zone, B3 zone.
And so residential as a owner occupied, or was it a rent?
Would be owner occupied.
It was.
So it has been people in there then?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
It was not owner occupied. No, it was rent, it's always a rental. Sorry. Sorry.
We'll probably ask more questions about that in a minute.
But it always been just a single
Unit.
unit?
to our knowledge?
Okay.
I can show you pictures.
I seen the work going on over there.
Yeah.
I was very impressed.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Riggs? I guess one question I have, does the substitution rather than a variance change anything we need to do as far as how we consider this?
Yeah, you don't follow the same, I don't have it in front of me, but there is a separate set of rules that you want to look at for substitutions. It's less onerous. You don't have to have all the 6 criteria. Basically, you have to decide whether this is more or less similar to the current use. Is it going to be more non-conforming or less non-conforming, or about the same? Is the decisions you need to make. I'll get up here.
Should we still ask these questions?
Yes.
Okay.
And this is so when we do make the motion, we have to mention for that address. It stays with that address. Do we need to mention that the multi-units or multi-family change?
Yes, for the substitution, you'll
Yes.
you'll
So
say
from a
that
single-
you're substituting a no less non-conforming use, and you can single unit to a triplex.
And that's all we discussing is changing that from single to triplex and no parking or nothing.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, I don't think I have any documents here about substitutions. I have the conditional use.
I believe that's in the zoning code. Let me give you that.
So that been in B3, basically just been grandfathered in just because it just been there for so long.
Yeah.
Mhm. I think
Rob, do we wanna have the testimony? Or are we waiting?
while we're waiting for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we can do that, okay. So I'd ask the appellant to approach the bench and, or their representative. Please identify yourself and your address, provide any pertinent testimony, or give reason why the request should be viewed favorably.
So my name is Jared Dean. I live at 465 Siegel Lane in Athens. My wife and I are owners of Panda Girl Properties LLC, and we have flipped some houses over the years, and this house came up for sale. A local realtor alerted me of it, said, hey, you should go look at this house. So we went to look at it, and our original intent was when we purchased the home, I didn't do a whole lot of research into what zone I was in or what purpose I was allowed to use the home for. It was rented to one gentleman. It was barely livable conditions. It was not an impressive interior of the home by any means. There were 4 bedrooms upstairs with 1 bath and a big living room, dining room, kitchen area, if you wanted to envision it that way. My original intent was, when I bought it, I was like, oh, well, we'll just turn this into a single family, 3 bedroom, 2.5 bath home. Then I went to the code office and they said, this is in a B3, you can't use this as a residential home. So I was like, okay. So then I started, pondering what other plans I could come up with for this space. So then we decided I could do a 2-bedroom upstairs, a 2-bedroom on the first floor, and a 1-bedroom in the basement. The upstairs would be a simple approval because it's above the first floor. First floor in the basement would have been approved for a short-term rental use, and that was my vision when I started doing this. As we've got closer to the finish line, I started thinking about what is going to be involved in managing short-term rentals. Just cleaning, running a website, or whatever you're going to do in order to manage those rentals. I'm already plenty busy as it is, so managing those properties seemed a little more complicated. So my hope was to get a variance, but after talking to Director Riggs, we decided that it was better to change the use, and my preference would be just to have them all be long-term rentals. Just easier for me to manage, easier for my wife to deal with, all the coming and going of money and whatever's supposed to go on with that. But we took about a year. We bought it in September of 23, took about a year. One of our carpenters is actually here. And the house has turned into a beautiful 3-bedroom home with a giant parking area in the back. We poured the whole backyard to accommodate the 5 parking spaces that we needed, but we actually got 7 out of it. So, anyways, that's the gist of the history of when we acquired it to where we are now. So if we are declined, then we'll figure out how we're going to manage some short-term rentals. But it would be simpler, in my mind, to run long-term rentals. So that's what we're asking for.
Mr. Riggs?
Mr. Chair, I did find it. It's Title 230502, non-conforming uses or buildings, enlargements, substitution, etc. It says that substitution, when authorized by the Board of Zoning Appeals, the substitution for a non-conforming use to another, not more objectionable non-conforming use may be made. So what you have to decide is whether it's more objectionable or not. They have a caveat for an R2 zone, which this isn't. They have a caveat for a B zone. They said in a B zone, no change shall be authorized to any use that is not permitted or conditionally permitted use in any B zone. So he's asking for residential on the first floor, which is allowed in a B1 zone. So it is not, it is permitted in a B zone. So this would be something that would be allowed for a substitution. So what the board needs to do is decide whether it's whether or not it's a more objectionable use, and you don't need to go through the 6 criteria.
Okay.
Thanks.
I would say, just while I'm still up here under oath,
Feel free.
that that the property directly behind, across the alley, but on Hudson, is a quad. Right? It's either a tri or a quad. Behind us, if you're looking at the place to my left, is Avalanche Pizza, which I talked to John on Monday. He gave me his blessing. But I haven't gone over to Speedway to ask anybody over there because I don't know who I would talk to from corporate for that. But I feel as if a long-term rental would be less disturbing to any.
Objectionable is the word you want.
There you go, objectionable, yeah, thank you. To the residents in close proximity, the constant changing of people coming in and out or moving in and out, if you want to call it that. I feel a long-term tenant would be more peaceful and quiet, potentially tenant in that area of town. Actually, one of the tenants is, the upstairs is already rented to somebody who is in Aaron's building.
Oh, Sammy.
Sammy, yes, Sammy was moved upstairs up there. So,
Did not know that. So.
whether that means I got a conflict of interest.
The request. Hearing none?
I will.
Oh.
My name is John Wharton. I live at 105 University Estates Boulevard. I'm actually here to speak on another case, but I didn't even realize Jared was going to be here. I'm the realtor that found the house and convinced him to buy it. You needed to see it before, if you didn't, and then see the after. And you should not only grant this, but build a statue to this guy, because it was a piece of crap, okay? And it's beautiful now. We need more people like you on the board, because I'm old. I'll bore you for 1 minute. I came to the BZA 20 years ago. I own Bronies. I bought a house at 4th Street. Behind the Armory was a parking lot at the base of the hill. It was a parking lot when I bought the house on 4th Street. It was a gravel parking lot, no lights, no retaining wall, nothing. I came to the board. It was a non-conforming use in an R1 zone. So I had to come and not get a variance, just ask to have a less objectionable non-conforming use. And unfortunately, the BZA, it was a personality thing instead of a logic thing, and they didn't like me, okay? I said, look, there's gonna be 10 cars parking there. I want to pave it, I want to build a retaining wall, and I want to put lights there. It isn't an issue of whether there's gonna be 10 cars there. It's an issue of, are they gonna be parking in the dark and mud? And I was turned down, okay? So it's nice to see people using their head now, okay? This is a no-brainer, okay? And I can only hope that Jared and his wife will continue to take on other projects, okay? Because I drove around town, and I picked out 4 or 5 houses that were just eyesores, okay? And luckily Jared stepped up and bought this one, so I'm done.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would wish to speak in favor of the request?
I'm in favor of
Would you need to come up here and say that, for the record, please, yes.
My name is Moss Miller. I live at 170 East State Street. I was a carpenter subbed by Jared Dean to help work on the place, and I also saw it from its beginning to its end, and can attest that he has done a lot to it and made it a very beautiful home that could potentially more families could live in, or more Athens residents could live in. So I'm in support of it being a long-term rental over a short-term to some degree also. So it was in very poor shape, and it is nice, as Mr. Warden said, it is nice to see more homes reclaimed and brought back to use, especially with residents and long-term residents. So I'm very in support of it being a long-term rental.
All right.
That's it.
All right, anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the request? Anyone wishing to speak in general? First of all, I guess before I go there, do we have any letters in the document we need to read?
No.
I don't think there are on this one, right?
I was disappointed.
You want to speak in support? Okay, come on up. No letters.
No letters.
Okay.
Since he didn't use me as a real estate agent, maybe I'll throw it. No, Matt Geiser, May Cemetery Road, Wilkes, Ohio. I just, as a matter of general information, maybe Director Riggs, you could, in case I'm ever in this situation, what's the current legal non-conforming use of this? Residential on the first,
Residential on the first floor.
and it was a
It's
rental?
not permitted in that zone.
Right.
So, since there is residential on the first floor, that's the non-conforming use, because it's not permitted?
But it's already approved for that, it's already grandfathered in.
Yes, yes.
What's he asking for is different?
Yeah, so from a 1 unit to a 3 unit is the difference.
On the first floor?
So, right, yeah, so what the substitution would be going from a 1 unit to a 3 unit, and the decision is whether it's not more objectionable.
Okay, and I'm just this is actually just for fun, because, if I was thinking that multifamily is already allowed in B3
Yes,
on second floor and above.
yes,
So, and this is already okay to have residential on the first floor,
for a 1 unit, yes,
on the first floor,
yes.
okay. So they have to change the first floor to multifamily then?
It has a basement.
Is that what you're doing?
It has a basement too.
Okay. No, I was just from my end, because multifamily is allowed, and it's already allowed residential on the first floor, so I was trying to figure out.
So I think that's the key. It's the basement is also a unit. If it weren't the basement,
It'd be first
it
floor.
would be
Okay.
the same.
So it's a
as
pretty
the
minor
multifamily.
thing you're doing here, pretty easy to, yeah. I
Yeah, a substitution's a lot better than a use variance request for this,
Yeah, because it's already there. I agree, it's no brainer. Wasn't trying.
No, you're good. This is educational to me. I actually wanted to say I do appreciate the zone office, the staff over there was incredibly helpful. This is not something I do, I flipped homes outside, over in Albany, we did one or whatever. Generally, we're just flipping to sell. But this is one we decided, hey, let's hang on to this one. And the code office was very helpful in leading me in the right direction to make sure that I am following the code as needed, and I was very
All right, so anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Bring the whole audience up. Anyone wishing to speak in general comment about this case? Or in opposition to it? Okay, so we'll close the floor. I guess you can go ahead and take your seat.
Thank you.
We need
My
to
pleasure.
bring
Thank
it
you.
back up. Okay, so we'll now deliberate. We're not gonna go through the questions like normal, so.
I mean, I think that this is closer aligned to the intent of the code. I mean, multifamily is allowed in the zoning district, so if we're going from non-conforming to non-conforming in some way, at least we're moving closer to where it should be.
It's more conforming.
Yeah, it's more conforming than single family.
Closer to conforming. I think, and it does, it is allowed in a B1, so it is not, it is allowed in this type of zone as well, so,
Yeah.
which is the caveat that,
Yeah.
Director raised, right?
And the property has become less objectionable.
Oh, significantly so, yes. I mean, the only thing I'm surprised is that I don't think, Goodcast thought it through very well, because if it's short-term rentals, you'll definitely sell more pizzas to.
So that was actually a process in my head. I was gonna, on my listing for Airbnb, I was gonna make an agreement with a free pizza for every person who came in. And I would, I've had those things rolling in my head.
Yeah, and John used to be a member of this board, so
Yes.
not that long ago.
I gotta say, like, in going with what the city is trying to do in other areas of policy to try and increase the number of residential options for people who want to live in the city, allowing this to be a long-term rental certainly conforms with that.
Yeah, it's definitely more beneficial to the city than short-term,
Yeah.
rental, all that would be.
So I guess just to make the point, if it were commercial space though, if this were a business that could move into this or level the building, I'm not suggesting that at the moment, but just to keep in mind what the probably B3 zone, the ultimate city's goal would be to have a true business be there and not residential.
Yeah, but that's not what the substitution is, like what we're evaluating. I think that's you know, in a commercial zone, it would be first floor business
Yeah.
with multi-unit residential above it, but we're evaluating just as a substitution for, does this move it closer
Right.
to, or is it less objectionable than current?
Yeah,
And
I think it is
my-
less objectionable or not much
Correct.
more at least, yeah. But I was just making that point that the ultimate goal of a B3 zone would be to have a true business here, in this location, but that's not what we're considering here, so.
For multifamily. Multifamily is also
Sound
allowed in the B3.
just not on the first floor.
Yeah. Mhm.
But the zone would allow.
Yeah, if you tore it down,
For
you
bed
could
and
build an apartment
breakfast.
building there, that is allowed in B3.
Right, but you'd have to have a commercial on the first floor.
Business on the first floor. And that,
But a bed and breakfast qualifies as commercial. So that was what got me in that mindset.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else comments before we call a vote? All right, so all in favor, we need a motion.
you need to make a motion?
Thank you, someone needs to make a motion.
You wanna make a motion? I already made one. You want?
I gotta click all the.
I can do it.
Alright.
Do me do it? I'm
Sure.
ready.
I already
You're
made
ready
one.
to go
Forward
for it.
document.
Okay, I wanna make a motion, for the appellant at address 3227 East State Street in case number 24-14S, where the appellant was requesting a substitution in accordance with ACC 23.07.02B to change a legal non-conforming single-family residential use to a legal non-conforming multifamily residential use.
Second.
Okay, call for a vote. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. That's 5-0. So you have your substitution. All right. Next case,
Keep it moving downstate.
case number 24-15V, at 170 East State Street. Appellant is requesting a variance from ACC 23.08.01A to allow a parking area in front of the structure when not permitted between the setback line. Mr. Riggs, will you please provide us your brief of the case?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, the city has for a long time had regulations about parking in the front of houses, and that is not permitted in the setback. It is permitted in front of a parking garage or a driveway, but, if you don't, in absence of that, you're not allowed to park in the front of the house, within the front yard setback. So we've had a significant change in the front yard setback. With the new zoning regulations, it had always been 25 feet or more. Currently, most of those zones have been changed to 10 feet. So a lot of that will go away, but this one still falls into that category of an area where they could park in front of the house, not in front of the garage, not in the driveway, that is prohibited by code.
So I rode by, I couldn't see past the bushes, but, so is this gonna be behind the bushes, like up the driveway?
It's right in front of the house. They're gonna basically put a turning area so they can.
Okay, all right, but not on the, that's why it's not on East State, it's not the grass. I lived on the far east side, so
Yeah, it's
we had gravel in front of the house that was off the street, and
Yes.
that's why I was trying to distinguish, okay.
Yeah, and I think the appellant can probably tell us more details, but I think there was mention of that they probably had to take out those bushes, but they may replant some things in the front to screen the area from the street. So. All right, any other questions for Mr. Riggs?
So just so I'm clear on this one was a hard one for me also. There's the 170 is set back, so it had a larger front area than some of the other houses on East State.
Yeah, 28 feet, yes.
So this would be a parking area, not, the driveway goes into the garage currently,
Yes.
and so it would be to the right of
Yes.
that.
Yes,
that
correct, yeah.
Okay, parking lot, okay, thank you.
So right now, it's just parking on the grass, if they pull it in, they just sitting on the grass if they park.
Yes, right now, yeah.
Well, if they were to do that, yeah, I don't know if it's even clear to do that, but they're currently using the driveway from the description. They're using the driveway,
Okay,
and
that's,
This would include building like a more level area, I think.
yeah, that's why I was confused, like, it was already a driveway there, and I was trying to figure out, it's off to the
The
side.
little map is very helpful.
Yeah, I'm looking at the map, but when I rode by, I was like, it's a driveway here.
Yeah.
Is, in the current use is, it's R1 zoned, and it's, does it have a current rental permit, or is it owner occupied?
I don't know the answer to that. It's not a rental.
No,
Yeah.
it's a single family one. We live there.
Yeah, you mentioned in your previous testimony you live at that address. I was like, I've heard that address before recently. I read it somewhere.
all right, so we bring the appellant up?
Yes.
Ready? All right, so if the appellant or representative would please approach the bench. And make sure you say your name and address for us, and then make your case to us about this variance.
Yeah, so my name is Kristen Chamberlain. I live at 170 East State Street. We rented on the west side for about, almost a decade, 9 years. I've been looking for a house for 6 years. And then really in earnest with Ryan Stolz as my realtor, I've put in multiple offers on houses, 2021 to 2024. When we found this house, I knew the parking wasn't ideal. If any of you are familiar, I hope that you are not, but if you have tried to buy a house in Athens recently that is not falling into the earth, they go fast and they go high. And so we put an offer in, it was accepted, and things moved pretty quickly. The house was built in 1938. It's beautiful. It has all the historic charm that we've been looking for. We want to make this our home. We've already spent, the time that we've been there making improvements. So the house was built in 1938, so was the garage. I mean, it's like touted in the newspaper, like 1938, and this is one of the first garages. That's great, but it also shows. It doesn't fit either of our cars. We use it for storage, which is also fine. The driveway itself is very narrow, so if you come to the top, they've put this kind of, no shade on the people who lived there before, but they put this kind of weird patio, so there's no way for us to kind of extend the garages maybe like 10 feet, 12 feet wide in total. So you drive up, when you get to the top spot, it's doable. If you are in the second position, you are on a very steep incline. So like you open up your hatch, all your groceries fall out. You try to get out of your car, you are on, so none of the grades match either, so the driveway is 8 feet wide. And then you have to kind of navigate a different grade when you are stepping out of your car to just disembark, just get out. That's the parking situation. The backing out situation is wildly dangerous. I've almost been hit multiple times and we've been there for 2 months. So you have to back out, you're on this kind of incline, there are kind of trees, so it's kind of difficult to see, and then you have to back into both lanes of traffic because there's off-street parking. So the opening to our driveway is quite narrow as well. So you have to back into both lanes, put it in park, and then go with flow of traffic. If people went 25 on State Street, it wouldn't be an issue, but people are flying up on you, people are stopping for you. It's a dangerous situation. So with that being said, we thought, and we actually park not in our driveway for the second spot because it's just, it's also dangerous for pedestrians because you can't see very well, and if people are kind of, it's a well-utilized sidewalk, which is great, but also dangerous for them and for us. Another kind of complicating factor is, so when we park on the street, getting out into traffic is whatever. And I'm gonna speak for us first, but then I'll kind of give you our other kind of accessibility issue. But if you're getting out on the passenger side, you're getting onto a hillside. There's no sidewalk, there's no you basically climb out onto the hill and then try to scramble up, which is interesting. And that would probably be doable for the two of us, at least in the shape that we're in now. But I have a 10-year-old son who was born premature. He had 2 laser eye surgeries for retinopathy of prematurity, so he has some issues with depth perception, so it would not be advisable for him to be disembarking the car onto State Street. The other issue is from the prematurity, I mean, he's in physical therapy still, but he can't get out of the car on the passenger side, so that's an issue. So one of us will stand there and try to kind of lift him out, which we've kind of slid down the hill or the hillside, so again, not ideal. Also, because our driveway is so narrow, he can't get out he could get out on the driver's side, but he's kind of scrambling through the neighbor's yard and then on the very edge of our property line. But then again, if he's trying to get out, if we're in the second position, he's on that kind of different grade. And so it's also just kind of a safety issue, again, kind of for him. So we're not wanting to pack cars in front of our house. We just want to be able to back in, have all of us be able to get out on flat ground, and then be able to pull forward onto State Street without having to back into 2 lanes of traffic, stop our car, and then go. We did talk to our neighbors. I tried to get, what a poor time to be trying to collect signatures during the election season because people, I'm showing up in a blazer and people are no. But so Anne, who is our neighbor at 180, who's been there for quite some time, she texted me today. She couldn't be here, but she supports us, and she said she's surprised that it hasn't been addressed because this driveway has been the same since, I think the newspaper article we looked at was from 30 years ago, and there are steps in the center of it, but that's the only difference. And then Lisa is the neighbor directly on the other side of us, and then Levi across the street at 171 have all signed that they would support. So, and yes, we have trees in front now. Most of those will still be able to remain. Anything that we remove, we will replace, so it won't be an eyesore. So that's our plan. We already have a landscaper identified if we are granted the permission to do so.
Kristen, one question. Have you guys thought about permeability of the parking area, just as far as runoff and?
Oh yeah, so we've actually already talked to Zach Powell, who has been drawing up the plans, and so he has plans for and we talked to Brian about it too from code, so having a plan to make sure that there isn't like runoff or any kind of issues that any of the neighbors or that State Street would encounter with that. And if we look at doing it, we'd like to do it in a time, like not spring.
Yeah. I think more for like the permanent permeability of that surface.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're increasing the kind of lot coverage, you know, that's directly going to affect East State Street. And particularly as we kind of like, you know, climate change makes us have like harder rain, then that goes right into that street.
Yeah, and that's something we can discuss with an engineer. I mean, we're happy to do that. We plan on being in this house long term, so we'll make sure that we're doing our due diligence in terms of, you know.
Sort of drainage, is it?
Like impervious surfaces.
Yeah, so, you know, often like bricks or, you know, like pavers as opposed to, you know, like a poured concrete surface. You know, sometimes poured concrete drainage, you know, that, you know, leads into like some sort of catch basin or so, or, you know, water, or rain garden or something like that. There are a bunch of different ways of approaching it.
I mean, that's something that we'll definitely rely on the experts for. I don't have any specific knowledge in kind of what the best type of materials, yeah. But that's something we've been working with Zach Powell, who is who kind of made our plans, just kind of thinking about like the logistics and also just kind of angles as to what kind of makes sense. That's a good question.
So a quick question from Mr. Riggs, talking about impervious surface and lot coverage. This did not exceed?
Yeah, so we
Those
changed,
numbers.
again, we changed the bulk controls,
Mhm.
so, we allow a lot more, impervious area than we had previously, so they're still within the current effective code.
If this bulk controls hadn't passed, would they have,
Not,
it still wouldn't have,
they would not have met,
would not have even met, okay. Any other questions for the appellant?
It sounds like grocery shopping as a family is a very risky endeavor. I almost kind of want to partly deny it so I can come by and like drive home from behind Kroger and watch.
You should just
chaos
watch the mess.
ensue.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be very neighborly.
Moving was really interesting. We broke some things.
I
They
witnessed
didn't
that.
open the truck and
Everything, yes. And then like people walking on the side were like, oh, I'm like, it's fine.
I see it in and out from the houses across the street all the time, coming down East State and get speed out and then go forward.
Yes, we actually, someone was, I don't know who was pulling out. It wasn't the person who lives there, but they pulled out and they were basically in both lanes of traffic and someone swerved around them into the wrong lane to not have a head-on collision because they were at a full stop. Yeah, in the summer, not as bad. Depending on different times, not as bad. Leaving for work, very scary. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to be honest, if we can't make a change to it, I don't know how long. I mean, we would live there for until probably our son can drive, but I can't imagine after experiencing it in its full glory, I can't imagine a new driver. Yeah.
Was it previously a rental or was it a single family home before you used it?
To my knowledge, it's never been a rental, which is amazing. If it were to be rented, Brian was telling me from code that they consider the garage a parking space, so it has 3 spaces, I guess. We have no interest in doing a rental, but to our knowledge, it's never been a rental.
I remember when I went on the market and you could see the pictures on Zillow. I mean, it's a beautiful home.
Yeah, it has like original hardwood floors and yeah, it's gorgeous.
How many bedrooms is it?
3, and then they finished the basement, so you could technically, I don't know if it would actually meet, but it's 3. Yeah. 3 bed, 2.5 bath.
All right, anyone else? Questions? All right, again, if you'd like to take a seat on the side here, and we'll continue. So is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in support of?
Rob, do we need to read the letter that the neighbors signed?
Oh, they did? did sign it.
They did sign it, yeah.
I mean,
It's a
already
long
in the record,
letter.
and
Yeah,
it's
it's-
duplicate.
So
Yeah.
we'll mention it here, so.
Yeah.
Go
My
ahead.
name is Moss Miller. I'm also live at 170 East State Street. Upon moving into the place, beautiful home, very happy. The driveway we knew was going to be an issue. We had talked to Zach at Ridge Runner Construction, who pours concrete, and he didn't think there'd be any issues. Obviously, we didn't follow up with code right then, but we knew that that was the biggest issue with the house, and we for the past month, 2 months, we've tried to manage getting in and out of this driveway, but we found that it's very dangerous and a huge hazard backing down that driveway. I think it's about a 412 pitch. So backing out into East State Street, you have to cross a sidewalk that gets a good amount of traffic, and then 2 lanes of East State Street traffic. And to give you a comparison, if you're coming down Columbia Ave, if you were at that stop sign there and you were faced up and you tried backing out into State Street, that's kind of what it would be like. It's a very steep pitch and it's a very heavy traffic road. I just want to give everyone an example of how dangerous it is. So I feel like granting permission for the pad would, for one, increase parking in that area. East State Street's already got there's a lot of people who park in our neighborhood right on East State Street there. And coming down forward the driveway would also give us ability to look for pedestrians and also any traffic accidents or something like that could happen on East State Street. So I feel like it'd be a win in many ways in terms of making that zone safer. There's a stoplight there also. So traffic sometimes stops at the light, so you're stuck there facing upwards, waiting for traffic. Pedestrians, like people are trying to get to class, like you're sitting there in the middle of the sidewalk. It's like, it'd just be a lot easier, safer to be coming down forward. And I think that was our original intention. It's not about having like a huge parking pad in front of the house. It's more pulling up in and then backing up and then being able to come back down. So having that space and having that flat zone to get out of the car or whatever. So it definitely, it's just very dangerous. And I feel like, the house was built in the 30s, and there's beautiful pictures of in the 30s, a vehicle would have been a lot smaller. I'm not exactly sure.
Maybe not as much traffic.
Not as much traffic, and since going from the west side, which parking was a nightmare over there, over to East State Street, I didn't realize how much traffic that part of East State Street gets, but it is just all day long, just cars, zoom. So, yes, in terms of safety, in terms of the community, and in terms of pedestrians and oncoming traffic, I think it just makes it a lot safer of a goal. So, but yes, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in favor of this request? Okay. So there is signatures on the letter in the record. It's in the document, so that's in the record. Who had signed that? Did you have that? You had it printed out?
I can't read the names. Let me see the address. Can you see the names? I'm looking at the letter.
So, can you help us decipher?
Yeah, Ann
Why don't
Roberts.
you come back up to the
Yeah.
chair if you would, please? Thanks.
Ann Roberts, who lives at 180, directly on I guess if you're facing East State,
Okay.
188, so to the left. Her partner Bob, who lives there. So Bob's signature's on there. Lisa Hines, who lives at 166, which is the house directly beside, and then Levi Rashik.
Rabbi Levi?
Yes, Rabbi Levi, right across the street, 171. I tried to
Okay.
get the other 2 houses, the one I think thought I was campaigning, and then the other one, no one was home, it's rental.
Okay, thank you. But 3 on the record is good. Helps your case. Okay, would anyone like to speak in general comment about this case or in opposition to this case, to this request? Okay, so I'm going to close the floor, and you can go ahead and take your seat again. And one thing I'd like to say is that being someone who's interested in road safety and pedestrian safety, I know that that section of East State Street, average speeds on it are over 25 miles an hour, probably 27 or 28, which the speed limit is 25, so the average speed is higher. That means most people are speeding on the street there. And there's about, I think, about 10,000 vehicles a day, so a pretty busy street. Anyone else comments or?
Thinking of safety for the school crossing walk right there, because that's where all the kids come out of in that time. So I'm
Yeah.
looking at the picture, I'm like, it's.
I think safety is an important aspect here because the use of the property, the access to the property being dangerous seems quite clear.
What's city council doing up there?
I think that's the parking garage we hear. I'm
Oh,
like,
is it the
yeah.
garage? I don't know. Okay, any other discussion? Comments? All right.
I think my really only worry is that it being, up a fairly, steep grade from that intersection, having a larger impervious surface, it's just gonna
Right off.
right down there. It's like,
Which
I've
is-
seen that happen throughout the city as we've.
And if it's
paved
designed
parts
right,
of it.
and if they landscape right, they could mitigate those
Oh,
kind of
yeah,
problems, right?
if it's done correctly, it is not any worry at all.
I'm not thinking
But
that's,
I don't know really how to, in a variance, we don't.
yeah, I'm not thinking
We don't always
that's,
have the power to say, just do it right.
I'm not thinking there's a condition we can put on this for something like that, really, right? But they've heard us say this now, right? So.
Noted.
No big concrete pad.
We know where you live.
We know where the water came from.
Okay, so are there exceptional circumstances? Chime in.
I can't think of another place on East State. I admire the people who live on East State getting in and out those driveways.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah, I think also specifically being that near to the intersection right there, it's makes it even more difficult because there's multiple, there's backup of traffic that happens. It's not even just a unimpeded flow.
Yeah, I think, and it goes beyond just the use of this property, it sort of adds to general welfare of the safety in that area.
So practical difficulty and undue hardship. I think the property itself has,
Yeah.
definitely has issues, and that's why there's challenges here that they've described to us.
Yeah,
a lot of blind spots.
and the narrow nature of the drive, meaning that, even just general parking in it is challenging, and how steep it is.
Yeah, I mean, even if they knock down the existing garage, I don't know that they could build one that was much larger because of, it's right up against the property line.
Yeah.
And, so I cannot think of another place that they could, put a flat, parking place and definitely not turn around.
Preservation of equal property rights. I don't know if there's any other properties that have parking in front of the
Yes.
houses along the street in this area, but there's certainly examples of
It's-
that in the city.
It's like maybe a block down, there's a kind of parking. It's like a family rental down the road on the same side
It's
street.
a front garage,
Yeah,
garage
it's
in
kinda-
front of the
Yeah.
house,
And those are safely accessible parking spaces. This is not a safely accessible parking space, so you could say that,
That one, most of the other ones
they
can
don't
turn
have
around.
equal right, they're losing the right to be able to park safely in front of their property.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't wanna park in that garage either.
No.
All right, minimum variance. It's 24 by 24 feet, I think is what they're building on.
Yeah, so it's
which
Two
is enough to
spots.
park two.
Theoretically, you could maybe, like, request one, but, I mean, if you request it, if you do a turnaround here, you kind of get rid of the spot in front of the garage as is, I think, right?
Mhm. And I've been on another property on this side of the street, just up a little bit, where coming in and turning around was essential to be able to get out. That was my take, and so I was in there picking up somebody and had to turn around, and it was very difficult to turn around with limited space. Even though there was essentially, it was a shared driveway with two properties, there was still not much space to turn around. It was difficult to do that, and I didn't want to try and back out, let me say. So you need sufficient space to be able to make that maneuver, and then having the space to unload like they're suggesting they need.
And it stays now within the allowable lot coverage. It's not going over that.
Right,
Yeah.
that's why I made,
They got the space for
specifically
it.
asked that question.
Space is there.
Absence of detriment. So we have some neighbors that have supported,
And no one has said.
and no one has said no, so. Not of a general nature.
I don't think this is one we've had before. Like,
Yeah.
Not this specific. We've had one other one that was parking in front of in the last year or two.
And that was an
Near east
expansion
side.
of a driveway, that was like a side.
It was to widen the
Yeah.
driveway a little bit.
I think 'cause this is much more to do with safety.
All right, would someone like to propose a motion?
We'll make a motion to grant variance for 170 East State Street, case number 2415B. Requesting a variance from ACC 23.08.01A to allow a parking area in front of the structure when not permitted between the setback line.
Seconded.
All right, any additional discussion? Okay, I'm gonna call for a vote. So all those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay. You have your variance 5-0.
Thank you.
I'm excited to see the end result of this.
All right, so our final set of cases is 3 cases at 0 University Estates Boulevard. Case number 24-16V, parcel A027400009703. And case 24-17V, same parcel number A027400009703. And case number 24-18V, parcel number A027400009702. The appellant is requesting a variance from AC 23.04.05, A1, and AC 23.04.07A to allow, hold it. I'm
This
reading
is-
the wrong.
No, I think
right.
you're in
You're
the
right.
Is that right?
You're right. Yeah,
Yeah.
first floor. Yeah.
It's, I
To
thought I
allow
maybe copied it
residential
wrong.
use. Yeah, right.
It's the same
What?
exact
Yeah,
It's
it's
the same
same thing for all the
as
parcels.
case 2.
All
Yeah.
3 are the same. So
Well, I'm
Oh.
looking at case 2. I
That's what it
thought,
says on the
I
agenda.
do have it correct? Okay.
yeah.
So let me finish, sorry, let me read that again. I was just
Not
making
from
sure I didn't make a copy and paste mistake. It's exactly the same wording from another case we just did. Appellant is requesting a variance from ACC 23.0405, A1, and ACC 23.0407A to allow residential use on the first floor in a B3 zone where residential use must be on the second floor and above. Okay, Mr. Riggs, would you like to give us your brief, please?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. If you look at the agenda, we do have a typo there. It was parcel number 702, 703, and 704. So
Okay.
just wanna make sure you got that.
Okay.
So this is kind of interesting. This is looking at three different cases. This is currently vacant land, and it's located at University Estates. Odd thing about it is that it's a
Hotel and conference center.
Hotel and conference center.
John might know
And
better.
so, we don't think that's ever really gonna happen. I'd be surprised if it did. So, in an ideal world, we would prefer to have rezoning here, right? So, I think there's some, issues with timing, that you can get a, BZA variance faster than you can, rezoning. Rezoning could take some time. But ideally, that whole area needs to be rezoned from a B3 to a residential. I don't think it makes any sense to have a B3 up there. Really should be residential. So I would recommend that if you do choose to approve this variance, you do it with a condition that they seek a rezoning within a certain amount, 30 days or whatever. And even if the city refuses that, you still end up with a approved legal non-conforming use in that case. So that should help both the situation of timing and actually getting the zoning corrected, which really needs to be residential there.
So I got a question, if we grant this and they do go and request like a rezoning for that area, would that slow down the process for anything moving forward on that property?
So they already have, if you gave, so hypothetically, if you gave them approval with a condition, they already have it, they can start.
Okay.
They can start working right away, because they already have it. And if it was denied, or if it never moved forward, then it would be basically a non-conforming use.
Or if they zoned it something they didn't want it to be.
Something weird, yeah.
But
Exactly.
When this,
Industrial institution.
when this on the city council here, like, didn't they just change the use of that, or was that another piece of property in University Estates that, I thought it was another piece of property that was on city council here a few months back. It was something.
University Estates?
Yeah, it was something that came up with the city commission. I don't know, I watch too much of the government channel, but I remember it was something that came up.
Yeah, I don't recall that.
Cause they was looking at rezoning the property
I think a lot of
from a
that
multi-use
area-
to a single use.
Just like we were talking about on Pomeroy Road, a lot of this area probably ought to be rethought. It's hard to do when you have multiple owners. In this case, you've got, I think the same owner owns all 5 of the lots that are zoned B3, is that correct?
I do have 5. Pat Smith also owns one.
Okay, all right, so you're not the only one.
I think
All right.
I'll talk when I get up there.
So with this case, once we get to the end looking at granting the variance, do we have to grant a variance for each parcel or just for the address?
You have 3 different cases, so you'd have to do.
So this
a
is-
variance for each one, and you could approve or deny.
So 3
for all.
motions.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is easier because it's one appellant and not multiple appellants.
But we still have to have 3 motions.
So you have 3 motions.
Still have 3 motions.
We had this map, but it was unclear to me from this map which parcels we were talking about. And maybe I just wasn't reading it right.
6,
Yeah.
7, and 8. 6, 7, and 8.
6, 7, and 8, that's, yeah, perfect.
The ones in the middle.
You know where they are on,
Yeah. Well, actually, I just can't be 100% sure.
so it's the backside of University Estates. Yeah, it goes in from 682 down here.
Yeah. It's a little way out in the back.
So I guess one thing I was unclear about is what I see on the county's parcel map is undivided.
Yes.
And so this is,
Yeah, so the appellant recently did a lot split, and
Okay.
it doesn't always show up that quickly on
Yeah.
the auditor's site. So what you see there has been approved and
Okay.
has been recorded, probably hasn't been updated on the auditor's site yet.
It is in the advanced parcel viewer, but not the
Yeah.
basic unadvanced parcel viewer.
okay. And I haven't downloaded the new data yet,
Yeah.
new enough to be able to I have that data on my laptop, but not as new as that, so. Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Riggs, clarifications here?
I think the question I have is the very large parcel that is like the balance of University Estates, like past it.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, big chunks of land.
Yeah, it wraps around the back of these
Yes.
parcels.
Yes.
You know, what's is that part of the city, within the city limits at this point?
It is, but that's a very steep area, really steep topography, and be difficult to do, I think, to do any kind of development there.
It's all green space. Zoned
It's-
green
it's
space.
currently
So
zoned green space, yeah.
It's zoned as green space?
Yes.
Because that's where there was originally plans for a
Golf
golf
course.
course, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, there is some green space zoning. It's the green on this map right here. But there is a substantial part that's zoned R1 behind there and some pieces of R3 and also B1 on the corner across the street.
Yeah, the
from
original
where we're
plan
looking
for that
at.
was supposed to be like a golf course with a hotel and conference center and.
But what's feasible here, I don't know, and what's economically feasible is a whole nother issue too, right? So,
Yeah. Okay.
all right, you ready to bring the appellant up, or we?
Yeah.
I guess the only other question I have is that there's a B1 across the street, is that?
Yes.
That's not part of this, I don't believe.
It is not.
It's not
but
part of this, what
It's
is
across
that?
the street.
Is that currently,
There is some B1 around the water tower, I think.
Yeah, there's a water
and
tower
some
there.
and some other areas. I don't really know what the original intent of that B1 was. I don't remember, I wasn't around.
but it's not currently in any way used as a B1 in my,
And all this
other
was,
than the water tower.
Right.
so all this was granted on just the future tense of this was supposed to be this and this, and when they went up there and surveyed it, they said this will, so.
And to make it even odder, everybody knows this, but it started out in the county and then was annexed into the city after it was partly constructed, so it's always been a mess.
Okay, bring the appellant up. All right, so if the appellant would like to approach.
Kind of give you guys some maps here. I thought we were gonna be upstairs. I thought there was a zoning map.
There is, there's a big one up there.
Fortunately, I had these in my folder.
I've got the details in front of me, so you guys can attend this one.
Well, this has a little bit more of the stuff on it. I'm gonna look at it.
Matt Geyser, Mason Cemetery Road, haven't moved, Wilkesville, Ohio. So I guess since you guys opened that can of worms up there, I'll just say, if you look at that first map I gave you, you got that pink B1, you got the brown R3. After this, there's, actually, the three lots we're talking about are inside that B3, the red B3. There's multiple companies up there. I'm a managing member of several of them. I do own the B1 that the water tower sits on, that 10 acres, in one of my companies. We do still own the R3 prior to this property as well. And after this is done, regardless of what happens, I'll have B3 before it and B3 after it, about 5 acres before and after these three parcels. So the green space that you see behind there, it's about 550 acres. My partner on the properties that we're talking about tonight, in that company, she owns the 550 acres of green space behind it. So all the neighbors are in favor of this, just so you know, because it's either myself or my partner on this property. Just be aware of that. I'm not so sure, I guess I'll just say, I'm not so sure about approving this with the condition that we apply for rezoning, because I have one of these under contract for a single family home build, and I don't know that I can, I mean, if you're saying that if we were to rezone this tonight or get a variance tonight and then it wasn't applied for, they'd be a non-conforming
You
use.
still have the variance.
They would still have the variance. It would be there. Okay, even if rezoning's not applied
Even if
for.
it blew up, yeah.
Okay, so what's the repercussions if it's not applied for?
Your variance would be invalid.
But there'd be a home on it already by then.
Yeah.
But you could, it doesn't
Okay.
matter if it's actually approved ultimately, you just need to start that process.
Okay,
That's
well-
what that would be saying.
I I think that opens a whole can of worms if you're gonna require rezone, or an application to rezone, because of the B1 that we own across the street, and the R3, and we're gonna have B3 prior to this. And there's a valid reason to keep it B3, is because you're allowed to do a bed and breakfast in a B3, and these are 2.5 acre lots in University Estates, and to do a bed and breakfast would be a use I wouldn't wanna lose up there. But that's not on the variance, and that's not on my request. So, what I'm asking for is to do residential on the first floor. We wanna do single-family homes on these 3 lots that are 2.25 to 2.5 acres. I agree with Director Riggs, these should never been B3 to begin with. You're on a 2-lane road that dead ends up there. There's a lot of safety concerns. EMS isn't real happy. They don't want a hotel up there. We had somebody look at putting a hotel, and they don't like it because if there was ever an issue like a big fire on a commercial building up there, you've got a 2-lane road that goes through a residential neighborhood, and if something were to happen to that road, they have no way in or out. So if that road were to get blocked in a tornado or something like that, they couldn't evacuate people up there in that area anyway. There was supposed to be a road came down through this property of the Armitage at one point in time. It never was developed. So doing B3 up there, doing commercial up there, you would be extremely limited on what you could do. And Director Riggs is shaking his head yes on that. So residential, as you guys know, is already allowed in B3. It's just that we want to do it 8 feet lower. We do have extremely limited business use up there, as I said. As far as the hardship, undue hardship, it would be difficult due to traffic. And if you look at that map where that B3 is, Director Riggs mentioned earlier tonight, most of your commercial should be on main thoroughfares. This is literally right, if you look at University Estates on that map, it is right smack in the middle of residential. It's a very small piece. And if you look at the rest of that map, your B3 is the East State Street corridor, Columbus Road corridor, West Union, a little bit on Richland. You know, those are your main thoroughfares. And so this is a very unique property in that, you know, there's no other commercial around it. There's no other commercial business around it. I did have some ownership in the front lot there where the surgery center is, and that just happened that Dr. Reed lived in University Estates and thought it would be a good idea to have a surgery center there. And so there's a little bit of medical down there, but other than that, there's no business around this.
It's the eye center there, right, too, the optical
care
center now.
So it doesn't conform to anything else, and there's no other businesses that this is going to hurt next to it. I guess I could go on a little bit, but you guys got my letter in there. We want to do single-family residential on these lots. And to answer your question, the B1, the 10 acres that's around the water tower site, I think if you look on the auditor's advanced parcel viewer, we just split that into 5 individual home sites as well, and we're wanting to put single-family residential there. I have buyers for one site on the water tower site because the city's extending that road back to Homestead Court, and I have a residential buyer that wants to build a nice home here. Last year, the R3 you see on there, the brown R3, we split that. That was like 10 or 12 acres. We split that into a couple 2-acre sites. Dr. Torsky, who lives in University Estates, is currently building a very nice home across 2 of those lots. He has about 4 acres up there. The idea is that side of the road, that R3, and what you see there in red, to be single-family homes. And that's what we're asking to do, to be able to put single-family homes up there. So, yeah.
Yeah, so the one property on the north end of that B3 zone, Abbott Smith, I see in the record here from the county, that's the piece that you don't own?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. He did, when I talked to him, he said if we could go ahead and get the variance on that, he would like to be able to do residential, and that, I mean, he would prefer that be residential as opposed to
We'd like to do that too.
B3, so he's not opposed to this at all.
Maybe the zoning change makes sense then.
These lots, these 3 lots would not rezone all the B3 up there, nor his.
Yeah, there's still more.
Would you subdivide these lots at all, or?
There, I can't subdivide them any further.
That's the new configuration in the map, the drawing, the sort of survey drawing that was in the document.
We would have loved to have done more nice single-family residential lots up there, but it's without going through major subdivision guidelines, it's extremely difficult to do. Yeah.
So you need frontage that's a certain width, and there's restrictions like that really to get a subdivision.
Well, and the
approval.
number of lot splits you can do on a lot split, we're limited to 5. So if you have 50 acres,
Okay.
you end up with 10 acre or 4 lot splits with 1 remaining. You got,
Interesting.
yeah.
How about the geography there? It's forested, but does it
All these
drop
sites
off?
have as far as University Estates goes, these are flat lots or have very nice home sites on them. The back, so they're 600, 700, 800 feet deep, some of them, at least 600 feet deep. When you get back like 400 feet, it starts to drop off to Armitage Road. But, you know, all of these sites, all of these have very nice home sites on them. I mean, you could there's a guy that put like a 10,000 square foot home up there in University Estates, and, you know, it would fit on any of these lots. I think he's asleep back there, but they're very buildable for a home. For a hotel, it'd be very difficult because it does, you know, there's other areas that do drop off and stuff, but we're just trying to do residential in a residential neighborhood. And I think it's very unique because this is an island inside of a residential subdivision. I can't find another example, anything like it in the city, so there's not anybody else who's gonna have a right to say, oh, I'm identical to that. And
This was what zoned out, when they start this project, 20 years ago?
2006, explain the agreement.
yeah. And a little history on that, and we need to get out of here tonight, but there was you know, I don't know how many of you are familiar, there was a federal lawsuit that the developer won against the city because the city was trying to stop certain things going up there basically, and the city got told that the developer got to go to the federal court to get approval for anything he wanted to do, and the city of Athens lost any control over the project, so he pretty much got rubber stamped on whatever he wanted to do after that, right, wrong, or indifferent, but you know, some of this stuff doesn't make sense, but some of it the city didn't even do.
I remember looking at the whole blueprint, they had everything laid out. It was Dr. Kennard, right? Was it Kennard?
Connor, yeah.
Connor?
Right, any other questions for the appellant?
No?
Thanks. Why don't you take a seat here just in case we need to call you back up. Okay, is there anyone here that would like to speak in favor of this request? There's still a bunch of people here.
I'm still John Wharton. I couldn't live with myself if after sitting for 2 hours and 15 minutes, I didn't come back up and at least say something. I live in a development. Myself and my partner were one of the 3 original builders. Dr. Connard came into town 25 years ago and had this vision for 300 plus home sites, golf course, convention center, condominiums. It was zoned accordingly because it was submitted to the city as a planned unit development. It had to have zoning there. As was alluded to in the Pomeroy Road incident, this is not the appropriate zoning for what it is today. And whether Matt applies to rezone the rest or not, I think that ultimately the land that's there will be sought by people to be owner-occupied home sites. I am on the board of the homeowners association. I'm not here speaking for the board, I'm speaking just as myself. And I can assure you that the people that live there want to see owner-occupied houses. We don't want to see businesses. I am involved with the developers that have been working on Woods Edge, which is the townhouse project that's about to get started after 6 years. And one of the things when we went to the planning commission was there was a deed restriction that they will be owner occupied for 5 years. It's very important to us. We don't want temporary people in the back of the development driving up and down the street at excessive speeds. We get enough of that from some of our residents, so it's a sore point, okay? So we don't want to see a lot more traffic, which was one of the reasons why they wanted to see the townhouses be owner occupied. We feel they'll be more conscious of the safety of the people in the neighborhood. And thank goodness there's going to be lights put in the development that actually work this coming year as compared to the ones that are there now. Because it's a big issue, safety. A lot of people walk in the development. A lot of people from the apartment complex walk through the development. And you know, anything that we can do to minimize traffic, and this will minimize traffic. So that's it. Any questions?
Yeah, so there's an HOA. There's an HOA.
Yes, there is.
University Estates with these properties.
No,
under that?
when this development was submitted to the city, as I said, the land that Matt owns was not included in phase 1 because it was for the conference center and the clubhouse. I'm not concerned that whoever the individual is that wants to build, and I don't know who it is, but I'm sure they'll build something that will be nice. And you know, I'm on the architecture review board of the HOA, and all we're trying to do is make sure the driveways are paved, that we don't have vinyl sidings, we have a reasonable amount of square footage, and no purple houses, you know. So, you know, or no sheds, or, you know, just some reasonable things that, you know. But one of the things that the Planning Commission does want is the townhouse development to have an HOA to enforce the owner occupied for 5 years. So whether they start their own or whether they request to join ours, that's up to the developer to decide. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you, Matt.
Thanks,
Good luck.
John.
Would anyone else like to speak in support of this proposal, this variance request? All right, would anyone like to speak in general comment or in opposition?
I say general comment.
General comment?
As a building.
You need to come up here to
All
see
right.
if we get you on there.
So as a contractor in town, anybody, oh, sorry, I'm Jared Dean, back to that. As a contractor in town, any new builds that are going on is potential business for me. It's not guaranteed business for me, but we want to see new builds. We want to see houses going up. I own, as part of another LLC, 8 acres in University Estates as well. So anything we can do to keep the building going, new homes, we want that. So that's basically all I got to say.
Thanks.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, you can.
Am I allowed?
Yep.
I just want to say, like, these also are going to be, the current lot that I have under contract is lot 7 for $170,000. These are, you know, going to be between $160,000 and $180,000 home sites. So
And that's the cost of the property, in other words.
each lot, yeah. That we're,
Okay.
yeah. I'm not building on these. I just want to sell them as individual,
Mhm.
you know, home sites. And so, I mean, they're going to be nice home sites. I mean, most people are going to spend $170,000 on their home site. Probably going to build a decent home on it, I would think. So.
Thanks. So at this point, I'll go ahead and close the floor, so you can go ahead and take your seat. Again, if we need to bring you back up, we will.
Now, I want to have full disclosure that I did talk to Matt a couple weeks ago before So he reached out to me via phone, because our phone numbers are available, so.
That's fine,
So-
that's
so-
allowable, so
so-
thank you for mentioning that, though. All right, so any discussion before we get into the variance questions?
We need to do this for every parcel, or do we need to go through the different 6 steps for every parcel?
Since
or-
they're similar, I would suggest that you lump them all together, but when you go to make your recommendation, that you do 3 different ones.
And one of them is a 4, right? One, the number is off on one of them. It's
Yes.
like 704, 702,
3 and
3.
702.
Can we make a motion that includes approval of all 3 in a single motion, but is a motion for each one individually as an approval? Just,
By the
just
time
have
you
it
get that,
there.
I've done my 3 motions.
I think being able to ask all the questions for all 3 together is fine.
Yeah, that's
And then the
great.
motions aren't that difficult once we get there, so,
Okay,
just to make sure we do it right.
fair.
So, should we dive in? Exceptional circumstances.
I think 26 years ago, somebody, decided something that
Nobody wants
doesn't
it.
really apply today.
It was a great idea. It was- The plan, the vision was great. The vision was great, but it's,
No longer applicable.
Yeah,
No.
this is definitely exceptional.
Yeah, there aren't a lot of these B3s in the middle of a
Yeah.
undeveloped,
space.
not fully developed green space / residential area.
Practical difficulty and undue hardship. Literal enforcement of regulations will result in practical difficulty or undue hardship that is unnecessary to the achievement of public purposes.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to build a, multi-floor like unit on each or all of the parcels, and then find businesses to go in the first floor of them, right?
Or like not, but probably not, be able to
Right.
find them, and then,
Potentially, yeah.
and then,
You'd have vacant commercial properties.
Yeah.
sitting there.
And
Yeah.
also upset the neighbors, since I think they mostly want it to be residential.
Yeah.
Preservation of equal property rights.
I mean, all the neighbors can do this.
Neighbors are various other zones that are a little more lenient in what you can do for residential, right? I think that's one of the differences here.
yeah.
Yeah, directly across the street, right?
Right, there's B1, there's R1, there's
Right across the
R3.
street.
Yeah.
B1, R1, R3 all together right there is B3.
Yep.
Minimum variance.
Plenty of space.
I don't think there's any other.
Yeah.
No.
Absence of detriment. And
Yeah, I don't see this is detrimental to anybody.
similar to the other building that's occurred up there and will, sounds like, continue to occur.
And no one's spoken against it.
No.
There was no opposition.
There's condos getting built right down the street.
Yeah, and townhomes nearby.
The townhomes is about to go up.
And not of a general nature.
This
Yeah.
is meant to be of a general nature.
There are, 4 of these lots, right?
Yeah.
5, right? Yeah,
Oh, so we have to do 3 motions. I guess the question is, do we include the condition that's been suggested by the city, by Mr. Riggs, zoning
For
administrator, that the appellant be required to at least submit a request for a zoning change? Again, like we discussed, it doesn't have to be approved, but then that would kick in for the city to review this, figure out if zoning changes make sense and make those changes instead of leaving it the way it is now as a non-compliant use.
Non-conforming use. yeah.
Non-conforming, that's the word I want, non-conforming use, thank you.
I think that's reasonable to do. This is an investment property that is, that should be changed. this should be changed, en masse, and the city should be activated by the owners of the property, right?
Is it already plans, look at this moving forward with the surrounding areas, or?
Yeah, we don't have any, the city doesn't have any plans to make zoning changes in that area.
So if this request were to come forward, would you look broader or just at the specific request that's being submitted? Is that an opportunity?
We'd have to think about what the potential is for development up there, and then you wanna look at those places. You know that some of the residential stuff or open space stuff that's way in the back, that'll probably, I can't imagine that ever developing anytime soon, so there's no real reason to look at that area. But yeah, some of the areas, it could kick in, the city looking at some of the areas. It just doesn't make a lot of sense right now.
Cause this variance stays with each parcel, correct? It stays with the parcel.
Yes.
And what's the difference between earlier we recommended that council evaluate the
Pomeroy?
Pomeroy section to be rezoned versus now we
Yeah.
want to
Make him actually.
make it, make
So
him
the
actually
difference
do it.
would be, for that area, it would be a spot zoning, which we really wanna try to avoid as much as possible.
Okay.
Here, you have basically a small area that's mostly owned by one entity. So that wouldn't be spot zoning, and that's why you wanna do it as a condition rather than a suggestion to look at the whole area. You've got a whole bunch of different property owners down there. So that would be something that you'd want to look at and it wouldn't be spot zoning.
Okay. That makes sense.
Back up.
Hold on a second, we'll see. My thought was, if the appellant is submitting a request, is it a request for a specific zone that he's asking for?
You could, or you
is
could
it
just ask for a rezone to a residential.
rezone to a residential?
But if he doesn't,
He was suggesting that the business zone, maybe even a B1, might be more desirable than going to an R zone because of the use potential for a
Bed and breakfast.
bed and breakfast. Is an R3 bed and breakfast still?
I think it got the contingencies for the location. I think that was one of the things that it was, like the main arteries, I think.
B1 does not allow for a bed and breakfast.
B1 does not, correct.
Oh, it does not.
No, B1 is not.
So,
He was looking at keeping it
do
B3.
we wanna call him back up just to at least clarify a couple of things?
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Feel free to come back up.
So yeah, my understanding is B3 is the only, maybe B2 allows for a bed and breakfast that's non-owner occupied.
B2, because Richland Avenue, I think is B2, and it does have some B&Bs on it, so I think.
And it was-
Well, in the other zonings, my understanding, in the other zonings like R3, or B1, you can do a bed and breakfast owner occupied. There's a big difference, right? Owner occupied bed and breakfast versus a bed and breakfast. I mean, I think that this is, I'm not gonna reapply. I mean, if that's the condition, I'll just withdraw the request, we'll just leave them B3. I'm not being a jerk, but it is spot zoning. There's parcels on both sides of these that are still B3 that, those are gonna stay B3, and we're gonna take 3 parcels out of 6 and make those required to rezone, but the ones on both sides won't have to. The ones across the street are B1. I have business partners on these that this is a huge condition that we haven't discussed. And we're just trying to do a nice project in a residential neighborhood and they'll get some single family homes up there. If you guys wanna recommend they rezone it, I don't care. I just can't do it with the stipulation that is required because I'm supposed to close on one of these in 30 days. And I've got to put that requirement now on a person buying a parcel. So that's not going to work.
Just be to
But
submit
that's not
the.
really our, you're the one who put that contract on the paper. Like, that's not our
Right, but
As a board, we can't consider that.
Well, what I'm saying is it's very unreasonable because the request is to do residential on the first floor. I mean, you just approved it with someone else and didn't force them to reapply for zoning.
Yeah, I think also that is an existing structure, it has a lot of history. We do, like, all of these are independent, like, cases that we have to evaluate independently. As, you know, this is unimproved land, it can stay that way.
Sure.
I would love to see it have a single family homes built on it, as would, yeah, it sounds like you. I don't think as a board, you know, as a member of the board, I can't speak for the entire board, but I think it is completely reasonable to, like, require owners, you know, to do, you know, specifically for investment properties, to, you know, do something to improve that property, you know, if they're asking us for something, because as of today, it's not, you know, it's B3, like, you know, and none of us made that decision, but, you know, like, you're asking us for something, we might ask you for something, and I think that's.
I understand, and I'm just saying that, like, the variance to do residential on the first floor versus a second is a pretty minor variance, especially up there in a residential neighborhood, and I think everyone wants it. I'm telling you, I can't commit to, I guess if we're gonna do B1 and you'll guarantee me a variance to continue to do unoccupied bed and breakfast in it, we can have, I'm fine with that.
It says R3 bed and breakfast, you can't have it if it's owner occupied or owner managed.
Yeah. And they're first allowed, bed and breakfast establishments are first allowed in a B2 zone, not owner occupied.
Does B2 does not allow residential use on the first floor.
B2 does not.
Does not.
Residential on the first floor.
Thanks.
So I guess one thing to keep in mind with this is that if we go ahead and grant this without the stipulation we've talked about, it is sort of making a jump through multiple levels of zoning. So normally when we're looking at a zoning variance, you don't want to make a big jump. You want to make a single level, usually movement variance for something will be allowed in a B2, but it's a B3. You know, that's something reasonable for us to consider. This is taking a bigger leap to make it a single family. It's jumping 4 or 5 levels down the zoning ultimately. So I think that's why it probably makes sense to include the stipulation, I think.
But I guess, Rob, you know, like, you know, just to, like, counter, you know, myself to some extent, like, this is clearly incorrectly zoned, which is why
That's true.
we might also make that request to have.
I'm suggesting another reason why we might also
Yeah.
consider it.
I guess I can see both sides of it, yeah. Director Riggs, I guess, can you, we haven't done a whole lot of rezoning requests in the past or for stipulations. What does that process actually look like, you know, if you were to have to go through it? Like,
So it starts at Planning Commission, and Planning Commission would review the zoning request, make a recommendation, and then send that to City Council. City Council can choose to look at that, and if they do, it's they have to do a committee and then 3 readings. So it's not a real fast process.
Hence why he wants to go through
Right.
this variance. What does he have to do to start this process? What would he be required to do if we put a condition here? Is it just a matter of a permit to the
Yeah, there's
code
just a
office?
one-page permit that he'd have to complete, and then we would move it on from there.
And so from there, that's the end of really the requirement for him at this point, really. That's all we're asking him to do.
So,
He can still start development.
Yes.
I'm just selling these lots to other individuals.
Well, I mean, yeah, but that,
but you
This-
own them today, and you could
Yeah.
submit that paperwork to the code office, Director Riggs,
Yes.
like tomorrow.
Yes.
our thing is that these variants follow the parcels. So whoever the owner may be tomorrow, these variants follow that parcel. So you sell it tomorrow, and somebody can say, we wanna put a hotel in.
Could.
So that's the contingencies on this variance, because it don't follow the owner, but it follows that piece of property.
I probably wouldn't do business in this city very long, though, if I sell Dr. Torski 4 acres up there for $300,000 and he goes to build a nice home on it.
Oh, yeah,
Then I tell him and promise him that we're gonna do single-family homes on the rest of them, and
Oh, yeah, we
so I'm supposed
completely
to tell on
understand.
there. I mean, that's not my
Yeah,
intention
yeah.
here, you know?
We just want to be clear that the variance follow the property itself, not the property owner. That's why we're talking about these contingencies, and that's what we run into. We can't base off other cases, but we always got to look at the variance, because we don't know what the next owner may do, but we got to make sure that we have everything in place, so whoever get it.
Have you guys ever done a variance approval with the requirement that they rezone it?
Every case varies. I mean,
We've done other contingencies that require similar, I mean,
yes.
applying for a form, an application, or even that, you know, that you no longer have a variance if you sell the property.
Yes.
So I would say that's, you know, potentially more onerous
And
in
this-
some ways, but.
And it's all stated in the motion. That's why we have to make sure we got our motion correct before we make this motion, because it goes with the property, with whatever the contingencies may be.
Yeah, so I think bottom line is, if we put a contingency on this, a condition on this, it's not onerous. It is just you have to start the process, and then your hands off, basically, then the city takes it. And that's, I think, the opportunity for the city to fix the zoning issue here.
It's kind of protecting
but
the
they can-
person you selling the property to, because, like I said, if you go sell us to somebody else and they say, yeah, we do want to put a business here and we do want to have a hotel here, or then that person you sold the previous parcel to,
Is that a lot? Because they got a business next.
and you can't really do nothing about it because you sold the lot to someone who promised to put a one-family home in, but they found out it was B3, and now they got a convenience store and, you know, apartments upstairs.
That was an interesting scenario.
I mean,
Right.
it potentially can turn into the space that's next to Family Dollar.
Well, it could do that, if you don't grant the variance, that's
Yes,
definitely.
right, exactly.
You know, if you do grant it, that definitely lessens the possibility of that ever happening.
All right, so I think we're done with your interrogation. We're done interrogating you again. So if you could take your seat again, and we're gonna
Thank you.
proceed here, I think.
Well, I guess.
Finish this up.
If you're gonna talk about, I have to apply for rezoning, does it matter which zone I apply for? I mean, are we gonna get that specific? There's a lot to this, Director
That's
Riggs.
what
You know,
I was asking.
So it looks like everybody thinks that the best use up there is residential, so I would maybe suggest that you just ask for, rather than a business use, a residential use, because that's really what everybody wants up there is a residential use.
so R3 is okay.
What's the condos that's going in? What's the townhouses? R3?
It's a PUD, it's
They're
R1,
PUD, so they don't need to follow the rest of the sign.
It's an exception.
but they're R1.
It would be, yeah, it would be like, you could be an R3, that would
Yeah.
be similar.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Townhomes, we don't have a zoning for townhomes, but it would be like townhomes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so
Motions?
motions.
A long motion, because you gotta
Are
include the
we-
parcels.
I don't know if we're in agreement,
Can I
but
just- I wanted ramifications of this. So if you approve it with the recommendation, then I'm required to do it.
if you want the variance.
But I don't have to take the variance even if you approve it.
Correct, you know,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Okay. I'm not gonna accept the variance with the stipulation I have to rezone 3 parcels inside of 6. I just think I mean, that will destroy that whole thing up there. So I guess I'd ask you to either approve it or deny it. residential on the first floor.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
So, discussion about the condition then. Are we in agreement we should include it, or are we not?
I
I think we made some good cases from different angles.
think
that
this should have been looked
Yeah.
at
it
10
gives
years
the
ago.
city the opportunity to fix the problem. Otherwise, it's gonna sit there and languish.
Yes.
And maybe something bad could happen.
Is that the only way the city can possibly actually take this up, is because we say that? Or is there like,
Well, so we can only recommend to the city,
yeah,
and then the city may or may not.
We would kind of expedite it. We would kind of
Yeah.
put it in motion
If-
faster
If
than.
someone requests it, it has to be dealt with by the city in some way.
Right, dealt with. The
My
city
understanding, but-
may decide
So
it
as I
doesn't
said,
make
there's
sense.
3 ways that you do a zoning request. One is, as the owner, can request it. You can have the planning commission request, the zoning change, or city council can take that zoning change on, so.
And the owner's here because
And
he
we're none of
trying to
those.
get it done before.
yeah.
To be clear.
The owner mentioned he looked at it and he said it would take up to 60 to 90 days for it to start moving. That's why he's here for the variance.
It's longer than that even
Yeah.
for rezoning.
Dave, can you address why this isn't spot zoning?
So we've closed the floor.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, so what are thoughts about this? We're gonna go ahead with conditions or not?
If we do, we got to look at what zone we're going to put in condition.
So Director Riggs suggested saying
R3.
a residential zone. Just say residential zone, then that can be decided if it's R1, R2, R3.
So if we say you have, the applicant has to request the rezoning of these 3 lots, is the city then only able to look at the rezoning of those 3 lots, or?
No, they could look at more.
Yeah.
I think
Would
it's
they,
the
do
impetus
they,
for
I
something.
mean, so I get, part of it is it unfair and onerous on him to the applicant to request for just these 3 lots, and then that's gonna change those 3 lots, and the other lots where there's still these problems are still gonna be an issue. And so the applicant's gone through what seems to be I mean, it's filing a thing, but it's not that onerous, but if it makes his project less viable, not
What we would do, if we got that, and I'm thinking just in general, so if you get a request for just a certain area where the zone's actually bigger than that, I think the city would be, should look at,
The whole
looking at the bigger area and saying maybe this all ought to be rezoned and not just. We've done that, actually with the last rezoning request on, down off of Mill, appellant, and I think it only took 60 days to get that approval. The appellant asked for a few lots to be approved, and we said, hey, we really need to look at these other lots too. And so the approval actually included, other lots other than the.
Was that DeLuca last
That
summer?
was that, Mr.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, last summer.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a good point, and that was the planning commission that looked at that and said, it makes sense to look bigger than just these 3
Yes.
or 4 lots. They added 3 more to the request essentially, so the planning commission has the ability to do those kind of things.
I'll say we leave.
So I think
leave the
again,
contingency out.
that's another reason this makes sense to include it, because then it gives the
I think
city the
the entire-
opportunity to
yeah.
fix the zoning.
It'll fix, yeah.
And they could say, no, we
Assuming the
don't
city
wanna.
does what it's supposed to do, it'll.
And the
fix
planning
that.
commission could say, no, we don't need to change anything here, and they could just reject it, but.
And is that us putting it in or leaving it out? That's the.
So the board does have this is, 230703, of the code. Conditions may be attached. The BZA may attach such conditions regarding location, character, other features of proposed structures or use may deem necessary in the interest of furthering, purposes of the zoning code and public interest. So you do have the
favor of the contingency. I feel like they may throw a big wrench in everything else. I think the city need to look at the space in general, because it's.
And that's what they would have an opportunity to do if this request is started.
But I also think that this, I don't necessarily see this as spot rezoning though, because if we're gonna look at it more comprehensively, just like we did earlier, I think that that's a recommendation from us that they should evaluate the whole area rather than
These three
having
lots.
the appellant start it up and then
Could we,
evaluate the whole
in
area.
other words, could we put a comment essentially on the motion that says the city staff should look at this and consider addressing the zoning without asking the appellant to do this?
Yeah, just like we did earlier at the Pomeroy location. I think that a similar motion makes sense in this case in my mind as well.
Does that seem reasonable, Mr. Rhodes?
I think the reason I would say this is not just one parcel, this is 3 parcels.
Yeah.
And it's a block of, a fairly clear block of out of 6 that needs to be flipped, right?
Yeah.
So it feels, and it's, it has it doesn't have a structure on it, it doesn't have,
Yeah.
it's already a residential structure.
Yeah.
So it feels a little bit different. I also, Director Riggs, is there any precedent for a recommendation like we did earlier being taken up and changed?
I don't think
in
we've done
recent
one
memory?
specifically for zoning, but we have done conditions on zoning, variances.
Sorry, maybe, no, like,
Has the
if
city
we-
actually acted on this?
on a recommendation by the board to rezone a section of the,
I think this will be the first time, but I think it's appropriate for this board to be able to
Make
do that,
recommendations.
make those recommendations.
agreed, yeah.
Especially when you see the same, from my standpoint, if this board keeps seeing the same, variance requests over and over again, it means there's
Yes.
something wrong, right? And that means, just like on Pomeroy Road, that means that we should be looking at, maybe rezoning that. But that should be your opinion, that there's something wrong here, and that's why you would wanna present that to the staff, for further review for zoning changes.
And I think in this scenario, it's like we, it's as I said, this is 3 out of 6 parcels. Like we're gonna get 3 more of these.
Yes.
At some point in time, either from him or from somebody else. And if he submits the form tomorrow, then he doesn't have to come back for a variance in
Starts the process.
6 months, a year, or whatever.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right, so would someone like to make a motion? 3 motions, but we'll start with 1.
Can we include all of them in one motion, or we gotta make
No,
3
three.
separate
It'll be
motions?
the same motion 3 times, you just have to
With
read
each
it.
parcel, different
Do
parcel.
we have to vote on each?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the typo is on case 16B, is that right? It should be 404 at the end of the parcel ID, is that right?
70,
It's
704,
2, 3,
703,
and 4.
702.
yeah, it's 2 703s there, so.
Yeah, which request is which?
Oh, yeah, 16 is 16B.
18 is
So, so 16B is 704.
Okay, so they're in order,
reverse order.
chronologically reverse order, yeah.
17B
Ordinal.
Yeah.
is 703.
So the motion is gonna include the contingency of getting the lots rezoned. So if we vote yes, then that means the appellant has to go through and do the paperwork. If we vote no, then what?
If we vote no, then it doesn't get anything.
Oh. Hmm,
Did we go through the checklist already? It's been so long now. I can't
Yes.
remember.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
I'm not in line with the contingency. I feel like the city need to just do it versus making the appellant,
Yeah.
versus making the appellant do it. I don't know why it hasn't been done, why it took this long, since it's been zoned for 20 years. Just my personal opinion, I feel like it's not on the appellant. I feel like the
There's a
city.
we're sort of split on that.
Yeah,
think, so.
I feel like the city need to do it, cause if not, the appellant's gonna have to come back again for the other 3 lots.
And then potentially also the B1 section is also gonna come in.
And if we,
But the city could also.
and if we recommend R3 and the city say, no, it's a B.
As he intends, yeah.
But he
I-
won't,
I-
but he won't be able to sell it if we put he basically said he's not gonna.
That's not. Like,
Yeah, I know that.
I don't think we have any data that actually supports that.
Yeah, right,
You know,
yeah.
If I, had some, Director Riggs could tell me that he couldn't sell it because until that rezoning happened, yeah, that's hugely onerous, but if it's just he has to goes down to the code office and do it, then that seems pretty reasonable. I mean, this isn't a best property. If I have multiple LLCs, if I need to go for that file of form so I can, make a profit, I go do it. So, I don't, like, if that's, like, based on the information that I have,
Yeah.
like, I can't see that this is actually,
It's not,
particularly
it's not
problematic.
detrimental.
So, if we propose the condition, then is that a poison pill for anyone here? I don't see it as really being.
No, it's not.
If we're still just
For
voting
me
yes or
it
no
is,
on the
but-
variances.
But let's go ahead.
Yeah.
Just-
So we would like to make a motion to start, one to start. It's
I
not
feel
that
like I talk a
difficult.
lot, I stand, but, Rob, are you as the chair, you do not make motions?
I don't know, honestly, if I.
Is Rob allowed to make motions, or he's not as the chair, right? That's what I thought, that's what.
It's on,
Director Riggs, how would I state the condition, like, what would be the?
So I would, you would
Yes,
recommend
oh, yeah, you
approval
should-
of,
It's on
variance
page
to
78
allow
if you're on the
residential
PDF.
on the first floor with the condition that the applicant, apply for,
Residential rezoning?
a rezoning to a residential use, residential zone.
And you said earlier that we should include a time frame for that? Or is that, I mean,
Oh, for him to be submitted
You'd
30
want-
days.
You'd want a time frame on that because what you wouldn't want is the property to get sold before
Yeah.
the request came in, because that would muddy, who would need to be making the request then, right? It wouldn't be the appellant at that point, it would be
the property owner.
the property owner, so that would be, you wanted kind of to have some kind of a time frame on there so that that doesn't happen.
And 30 days is what's been suggested, I think. So.
The parcel numbers are 2, 3, and 4, right? Is the last one?
2, 3, and 4.
Okay.
So it's 432.
So if the appellant
And
Do
makes,
I have to read the case number?
Yes.
so if the appellant makes the request, then it stays with the parcel if it gets sold and, okay.
4, and 17, and 3, and 18. Okay, I'm gonna take a stab at this first one,
You were
and
good
if I
when you did
really
this
butcher it,
before.
then someone else is gonna have to take over. Okay, motion to approve, the variance for case number 24-16V for 0 University Estates Boulevard, parcel number A027400009704. A variance for ACC 230405A1 slash ACC 270407A to allow residential use on the first floor in a B3 zone where residential use must be on the second floor.
it's
And
230407A.
230407.
You said 27.
Do I need to restate that?
No, you're okay.
Okay. With the condition that the applicant applies for a residential rezoning within 30 days.
in favor of this
First one.
request, the first one? Okay, we're all in favor?
Okay,
Motion
got
two?
it. I gotta do it again, okay. Motion to approve a variance for case number 24-17V for a property at 0 University Estates Boulevard, parcel A027400009703. The variance request from ACC 230405A1/ACC 230407A to allow residential use on the first floor in a B3 zone where residential use must be on the second floor and above, with the condition that the applicant applies for a residential rezoning within 30 days.
A second on that?
Seconded.
All right, all in favor, right hand. All in favor, 5-0. All right, next motion.
Motion to approve zoning request for case number 18V for a property located at 0 University Estates Boulevard, parcel number A027400009702. A request for a variance from ACC 230405A1/ACC 230407A to allow residential use on the first floor in a B3 zone where residential use must be on the second floor and above, with the condition that the applicant applies for residential rezoning within 30 days.
Seconded.
All right, all in favor? Right hand? 5-0. So all three motions have been approved for the variances for this case. So you have your variances, do as you will. Okay, other business. Disposition of minutes from October 8th, 2024. Have the members present that were there, Ben, Aaron, Paul, and Alicia? The four of you. Oh, you were not there?
Was there?
Shay was there.
Shay was there. Oh, okay, Alicia, you were not.
No.
Okay, I wasn't, so I don't remember. I wrote down that you were, so, okay.
I move to approve the minutes
Seconded.
from October.
Okay, and there's three of you, so you'll have to vote to affirm this. Okay, all approved, minutes are approved. Okay, now, the last item on the agenda is a public statement from the chairperson, and some of you are probably wondering what this is about. So when I read this, it'll explain, I think, but it was from the August 13th meeting. We had a minor incident. So I want to say that professionalism in the context of a municipal board of zoning appeals meeting is essential to ensuring a respectful, fair, and productive environment where community concerns and property rights are considered thoughtfully and impartially. Board members must communicate clearly and respectfully, showing courtesy to all participants, including petitioners, community members, and fellow board members. Maintaining professionalism builds public trust and upholds the credibility of the BZA's decisions, fostering a process where all parties feel heard and respected, even when contentious issues arise. So to be clear, while this is an instruction to the board, to the members, I'm directing this more at me, inward, than anyone else. I'm not thinking about any of the rest of you really, but just want to make sure we're clear about this, and being professional is important here. I have, since I've been the chair, we've all done, I think, a pretty good job with this. But during the BZA meeting on August 13th this year, I made an unnecessary and unprofessional comment about an individual that was not in attendance at the meeting. So I want to apologize to Ms. Joan Kranansky for a comment that I made off the cuff during that meeting that disparaged the value of her input to the board. And I think that's the bottom line. It downplayed her comment and her input. So I will work in the future to maintain standards of professionalism and to ensure the BZA consistently follows the established procedures for receiving and responding to public input. All right. And with that, we're adjourned.